เรียกไหม
It is the appointed hour. We have a quorum present, and therefore I would like to call this meeting to order. Actually, this will be several meetings. These meetings will be conducted in compliance with Nebraska's open meeting laws, a copy of which is on the back wall. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will convene first as the Board of Equalization. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, before I do that, just I think we're not going to have the agenda on the screen because I can't get it to appear. So, I mean, we could still vote electronically, but I'm just going to let folks know we're going to put the screen that normally has the agenda on the video of the meeting until I can get this figured out. So, okay, thank you. Commissioner Borgeson. Present. Commissioner Boyle. Here. Commissioner Kavanaugh. Here. Commissioner Kraft. I see him.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Commissioner Morgan. Here. Commissioner Rogers. Here. Mr. Chair.
Present. Thank you. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, November 24th. Item B is to call for a meeting and set Tuesday, December 15th as the date for hearing on certified assessment corrections. Second. Motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Morgan to approve A and B. Questions or comments? Then could we please vote?
Are we going to allow, is Commissioner Kraft able to vote today?
Teresa?
In hallways together, so the hallways and bathrooms.
Yeah, if you take the microphone for a moment, Teresa, and as our attorney, would you catch us up on the latest in state law, where we're at the moment concerning Commissioner Kraft?
Teresa Urick, County Attorney's Office. So the governor did issue Executive Order 20-36. It does waive the Open Meetings Act again and allows for folks to participate in an open meeting now for quorum and for voting. And so I believe Commissioner Kraft can participate should the board choose to follow Executive Order 20-36.
Okay, thank you. Should we choose to follow an executive order? I didn't know we had a choice. Very good. Okay, then.
So I would vote yes.
All right. Yeah, we'll go back to recording your votes, tallying them separately in case there's ever a legal challenge. But it's good to have you back joining us, Commissioner Kraft.
Yes.
Very, very pleased that I can vote again.
Yes.
Yes, so motion passes 7-0, one voting virtually, all the rest in person.
Thank you. Citizens' comments. Would anybody like to address the Board of Equalization on any item that is not on the agenda? This is the appropriate opportunity. Seeing none, brings us down to resolutions D through G.
Motion to approve. Second.
And does that motion include adjournment?
Yes.
Thank you. I am not aware of need for executive session for the Board of Equalization. So the motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Rogers, is for resolutions D through G and adjournment of the Board of Equalization. Could we please vote?
I vote yes.
It's great having Mark able to participate.
Yep. Yep.
Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Kraft voting virtually, all the rest in person.
Thank you. We will now convene as the Board of Corrections. Could we please have the roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Commissioner Morgeson? Commissioner Boyle?
Here.
Commissioner Kavanaugh? Commissioner Kraft?
Here.
Commissioner Morgan?
Here.
Commissioner Rogers? Mr. Chair.
Present. Thank you. Item 1 is approval of the minutes of the Board of Corrections meeting held Tuesday, November 24th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Morgan. Could we please vote on item 1, the minutes?
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Kraft voting virtually, all the rest in person.
Thank you. Citizen comments. Would anybody like to address the Board of Corrections on anything not on the agenda? This is the opportunity. Okay, seeing none, we will turn to the report from the Director of Corrections, Mr. Mike Myers. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Myers, Director of Corrections for Douglas County. You have my report for November. Beginning with enclosure number 1, excuse me, administrative services. We are now $332,303 under budget, over our projected, and I do have an explanation for that in a moment. However, we do believe that there's a significant amount of CARES expenditures which will hit the budget this month. So we'll see how that all works itself out. I did want to comment, last month I gave you a report that said we were close to $600,000 over budget. We found an error in our projection calculation. Our spending has remained on track, but our projected amount that we thought we should have spent was under what it should have been last month. So last month's report was the error. This month's report is the accurate figure. So my apologies for that. Once we saw a wide swing, we investigated the database and discovered, discovered a miscalculation. If I'm going to make a mistake, swinging $900,000 in the right direction is how I'd like to do that. $320,275 were spent on overtime during November. That is a decrease of about $30,000 from the previous month. Due to 8 largely CARES-driven simultaneous construction projects, we do anticipate higher than expected overtime costs throughout the remainder of 2020. Enclosure number 2, community corrections. Due to the drastic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on community corrections, our data is significantly different from the norm, and many staff have been repurposed to allow essential functions to continue. Work Release Reentry Assistance Program, RAP, and Therapeutic Community, and the Law Library were all suspended for the duration of the month in response to COVID-19 related challenges and CARES construction projects. Individual requests for the Law Library are still being handled. Our reentry services staff have had good portions of their work days converted to facilitating online court hearings. During November, they facilitated 436 court hearings and facilitated 50 hours of review of discovery-related material. We do have a plan. We created a new job description. That job is posted to get the reentry specialists back to their mission and have a more appropriately qualified person handling the court hearings as soon as we can get them hired and on board. So I'd expect that early in 2021. 24/7 sobriety operations have changed drastically during the pandemic in order to become largely remote to minimize face-to-face interactions. We have seen an increase in drug testing violations with the changes in the program that impact the immediacy of testing and the consequences for drug use. And there appears to be at least a line cut off now that I'm looking at this. So I'll skip to where I can tell you that our alcohol breath compliance was 99.9% for the remote breath testing. 24 individuals were monitored for 670 days of SCRAM monitoring, and that compliance rate was also 99.9%. There were 54 saliva drug tests administered with 4 violations, and there were 117 drug testing patches submitted for testing, and there were 60 violations. Work release was closed for the month, while house arrest admitted 52 individuals. The reentry assistance program was closed. Therapeutic communities, there was limited programming provided by the reentry services staff. Pretrial services. We continue to provide daily information to the courts regarding candidates for bond reduction and early pleas in response to the pandemic. 29 individuals were referred to for priority prosecution, and 365 bed days were saved. 230 individuals were placed on pretrial release. Altogether, there were 1,327 individuals managed on pretrial release with a 92% compliance rate. As I mentioned earlier, the law library has been closed, but we're still handling requests individually. New for pretrial services, DCDC is leading an effort among the local criminal justice system in Douglas County to enhance pretrial release programming and utilization. Several months ago, Douglas County was selected to be the 5th county nationally to participate in the utilization of a new risk assessment known as the Public Safety Assessment. A year-long pilot project was launched in November with kickoff meetings attended by representatives from the Department of Corrections, County Court, District Court, the City Prosecutor, Public Defender, County Attorney, Douglas County Board with Commissioner Rogers, the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, and the Omaha Police Department. During the upcoming 12-month period, technical assistance will be provided to this coalition of agencies to implement the public safety assessment, as well as an array of supervision and supportive services to provide alternatives to pretrial detention. We hope that this culminates in a pretrial system which is free from bias and enhances public safety by effectively matching risks with services and supervision designed to mitigate those risks. Enclosure number 3, compliance. With the recent completion of our American Correctional Association audits, our audit cycles for 2020 are complete. Documentation will begin soon for the 2021 cycles. Enclosure number 4, personnel. 2 sergeants and 11 officers below the rank of sergeant left employment in November. This is a sharp increase in attrition over the previous month. However, this includes 3 retirements and 3 new officers who did not successfully complete the training academy. We concluded the month having 387 of our 396 authorized uniform staff, a net gain of 13. A class of 20 officers will graduate from the training academy on this Friday. And so, Commissioners, I will work, our IT person who handles all the virtual and that sort of technology and set up the graduation last time actually has been out. Hopefully she'll be back by the end of the week and we can get that set up, or I'll see if I can have somebody pinch in and figure out how to do that for us so that you guys will get an invite out to you and the families. We hope to achieve our full authorized strength of officers for the first time in several years with the addition of our first quarter class of 2021, which is slated to begin in mid-January. Anthony Batten and Jolani Ballard were promoted to sergeant in November. Congratulations to Anthony and Jolani on a job well done. Enclosure number 5, population. There were 1,183 admissions. That is a decrease from the previous month. There were 1,208 releases. Our high count was 1,240. Our low count was 1,151. And our average daily population was 1,190, which also is a decrease over the previous month. There were 87 custodial sanctioned bed days. The U.S. Marshal population remains stable. The ICE population remains stable. Felony pretrial population decreased. The misdemeanor pretrial population remains stable. Probation violations remain stable. The female population decreased, but we did have the 4th female housing unit open. Moving on to enclosure number 6, medical. There were 1,156 intake screenings, and there were 398 physical and health assessments. Inmates were sent out 24 times for emergency medical care. 12 of those were by 911. There were 10 hospital admissions, which resulted in 52 combined days of hospitalization. Enclosure number 7, mental health. There were 68 initial psychiatric assessments, 70 initial mental health assessments. There were 58 mental health infirmary placements. There were 3 referrals to the Board of Mental Health and 3 transfers to long-term psychiatric facilities. And other noteworthy items, DCDC continues to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the surge of COVID-19 cases in the community, we did not see a large increase among our staff or the incarcerated population in November. We did have cases among both groups, but the numbers have been far more manageable than the outbreak that occurred during the summer months. We began using the majority of our virus-killing robots throughout the jail in November. Our final shipment of larger models, which will be used for the large housing units, will arrive in December and will be deployed immediately. We also re-implemented mandatory N95 masks and protective eyewear for staff while in the facility in November. Several CARES-funded renovation and improvement projects are underway and will continue for the remainder of 2020. We are currently moving forward with with projects funded by CARES to develop the ability to provide a wide variety of programming virtually. Our classroom programming has been largely suspended for the past several months, and we hope this will be a first step to resuming those badly needed services. We are also communicating with the Douglas County Health Department to plan for COVID-19 vaccinations for our staff as soon as they become available. I actually have a meeting on Friday to start discussing logistics with the health department. The use of 2 body scanners went live on November 25th, following infrastructure preparation, installation, and staff training. The scanners have already located contraband on multiple occasions, which otherwise may have been introduced into the facility. Proposals for body-worn cameras are currently being evaluated. The data management component of this project is quite complex, so it is taking a little longer for us. We have to work with Dotcomm on a lot of aspects of that. We hope to have a vendor selected in the coming weeks. As 2020 draws to a close, I want to acknowledge the dedication, commitment, and collaboration that has helped us make it through this year. We leaned heavily on the Douglas County Health Department and Nebraska Medicine to help us plan for and respond to the pandemic. Human Resources has provided consistent guidance to navigate COVID-19 personnel matters. We worked in partnership with the Douglas County Attorney, Public Defender, City of Omaha Prosecutor, County Court, District Court, Federal Court, Dotcomm, and others to take virtual court from a thought to a reality in about 2 weeks. We collaborated with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, Omaha Police Department, and other local law enforcement agencies to navigate civil unrest that was superimposed upon a pandemic. With the advent of the CARES Act, we have worked with the County Board, County Administration, the Civil Division of the County Attorney's Office, Public Properties, and a host of vendors and contractors to complete what we would normally consider an unthinkable number of projects in a very short amount of time. And finally, I want to thank our staff. Corrections is a tough business in any year. This year, our staff have become infectious disease experts, construction consultants. They have been the object of ridicule and provocation. They have gotten sick. They have seen their coworkers get sick. They've had to isolate. They've dealt with periods of mandatory overtime, among many other challenges. Through it all, we have persevered. We are nearly 100% staffed for the first time in several years. And with the COVID-19 vaccine a matter of weeks away, we are poised to accomplish significant achievements in 2021. And lastly, I want to talk to Commissioners Duda and Kraft, as this is my final board report that I'll deliver to you. I did not want to overlook the opportunity to thank you for your collective wisdom and support. We would not have made the progress we have made without your contributions both prior to and during my tenure as director. Be assured that we will continue to strive to be the best department we can, and your legacies will be felt long after your time of public service to Douglas County has concluded. With that, I stand ready for your questions.
Thank you for your kind words. Questions or comments for Director Myers?
If I may comment?
Commissioner Kraft.
Yes. Mike, you've done an exceptional job giving these very trying times. And I want to really thank you. I think you've been, I'll use the word exceptional again, in serving the needs of our incarcerated community. And this will be my final thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Kraft. I'll give my final comment here as well, if I may. The biggest change I have seen in my tenure on the county board is the change in how we approach corrections. The professionalism, the respect that is now there, that was not part of our culture 20 or 25 years ago. You follow in a line of some great leaders that have taught us a lot. Bob Houston, Mark Foxall. You are a great successor. I feel very good about the condition of the jail today relative to when I came in. It is in good hands, doing very good things, and I salute you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Cowan.
Thank you. And thanks for this report. I'm glad to hear that for the first time since I can remember, we're close to 100% staffed. And the one question I have is, you indicated there's a new class coming on Friday, 28 new corrections officers. Is that included in the 387 complement of on-staff personnel?
Let me make sure I clarify. We have a class graduating on Friday.
Uh-huh.
And then we have that class is included in our totals.
Uh-huh.
That we'll have another class that will either begin, we haven't settled on the start date. It'll likely be January 11th. It may be the following week, depending upon how quickly we complete the building of the class. That's the class that I think will put us over the hump in terms of getting to 100% staff.
What's the number of people in that class?
We're still building it. It's approximate, right now I believe we have 18 offers, which are in the process of being extended.
So by the time that they graduate, we should be at or above our 396 authorized level for the first time that I can remember, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Knocking on.
Well, that's good. The impact of that should be, correct me if I'm wrong, a diminution of our overtime hours. Is that right?
That's correct. It won't eliminate overtime because you still have, we'll be using overtime for what overtime should be used for, to cover training, to cover other people's vacations, to cover other people's sick days, not just to staff your jail on a day-to-day basis.
Well, kudos to you and your administration on this, because that realizes actual savings to the county by not having overtime hours, which are in excess of our usual budgeted hours, and to the personnel there who are not overtaxed by putting in 60-plus hours a week at a very, very difficult job to begin with. So kudos on that. As I usually do, I just want to run through a couple of other metrics with you regarding this. The average population is 1190 for the last month. Is that about where we were year-to-date in 2019?
So there's a little, probably, I don't have that number with me right now.
Sure.
It might be on a graph actually in here, I could probably find it. But it is, overall, we've had fewer admissions into jail this year. One thing to consider right now is I have 0 people in work release and wrap. Some of those 1190, if that building was open right now, would be over there, and that number would be even lower. So when we're looking to reopen community corrections next month, once the CARES renovations are done. There may be 60 or 70 people that would be over in that building, or sometimes higher, that kind of skew the numbers upward in the jail right now because we don't have that facility open.
All right. I appreciate that. The final is thanks again for including the demographic breakout on page 37. It appears that the population in the most recent report is 62.5% minority population, 47.8% white population. Does that track with your understanding?
Yes.
So, again, we've run this chronic, ongoing minority-majority population in our corrections department and our youth facility, which is problematic. I point this out every single time because we need to try to work to make that better. But I also point out that you have no control who comes to your facilities. You're on the receiving end of whoever is brought to you by the law enforcement community. So thank you for that, and stay well. Thanks.
You. I do want to point out, I'm hopeful that the pretrial reforms that we're pushing for, that might have an impact on the demographics, in theory. If you're relying less on cash bail and more on supervision, individuals who may come from an economically disadvantaged background have a better shot of getting out under those conditions of supervision if they don't have the money to post for a bond. So I can't predict that outcome at this point, but it is one of the hoped for outcomes.
Well, that's very interesting because, having this number of people locked up in our community is not a success story by any stretch of the imagination. And so bringing that number down and having the population be more representative of the racial makeup of our community are two goals that we should all strive for. So I appreciate that. You indicate that no cash bond is one. Is there another pretrial initiative that you can point to?
I want to be careful. It's not. No, we're not eliminating. We're pushing for the elimination of cash bond. We're developing an array of choices that judges can use instead of cash bond, based upon giving them more information, more assessments and evaluations, and then we providing services and supervision, so that they can safely have people, they can safely say, much like our 24/7 sobriety program, if you do this program, I'll reduce your bond to 0. Those are the types of things that we're hoping we will see just on a more robust and comprehensive way, with 24/7 sort of being our that charted our course on this several years ago.
And it's important to note that the setting of the bond is the exclusive prerogative of the judiciary. We don't
That's
have control
correct.
over that.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments for the director? Commissioner Boyle.
Yes, Mike, another good report. You're doing a terrific job, and a lot of the material that I was going to ask about, Mr. Kavanaugh talked about. I think the important point that I want to make is that when the new recruits are sworn in, that the ones that I've been able to participate in prior to COVID, we always talked about respect for one another and respect for the people who are there, because they, in many cases, well, they live right here in our city. They're our neighbors in one way or another. And so that's really been stressed, and I know that's your attitude and your staff's attitude as well. One of the, I brought up at a criminal justice meeting, I brought up doing away with cash bail, and one of the judges in the county court got pretty excited. You know, Mr. Kavanaugh is absolutely correct. It's the judges who set the bail. And there's a whole lot of things that enter in here, cite and release and all sorts of things to try to drive these numbers down, and particularly when they're minor offenses. So I'm really excited about the possibility of the utilization of a new risk assessment known as the public safety assessment. That's going to be really good, and I think that will lead to good things. So I really appreciate your involvement, and we need to be sure we get the judiciary in there, because they are the ones who start the whole program for us. One of the things I'm curious about, and I've kind of harped on quite a bit with the juvenile system particularly, is the probation, because I'm very concerned about the folks that we're telling to come back on in 4 weeks or whatever at a certain time really don't lead very orderly lives. And I compare myself to that. I blow off places where I'm supposed to be accidentally. And I think some of these folks do the same thing. And I'm always concerned about these violation of probation that kicks in sort of a spiral down and leads to something else. When you get a chance, bring that up, please, in the discussions with these folks. That's really, and I would be interested in the number of people who are on the probation violations when you make your report, if that's possible, if you don't already. But I think I really, the only last question I have is, when the staff is vaccinated, I doubt that the inmates will be vaccinated, but is there any plan for that, or is that just part of that's not going to work?
You know, that's going to be part of our discussions with the health department.
Okay.
That's a little more complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, at first there's the criteria that the state has laid out as to which groups get it first.
Yeah.
The other, what we'll have to, you know, many of our people, 45% of our people are gone within a matter of days.
Right.
Because of they get their bonds reduced or so forth. So since it's a 2-shot series, I'm not sure what the health department's response will be. Should you administer that first dose while you have them in custody and then hope you can catch them the second time out in the community somewhere? Or will we just focus on people who we know are going to be there for at least 4 weeks apart, so that they can get both doses? But that'll be part of our conversation on Friday.
Okay. And lastly, I want to ask you, you mentioned people who've been hospitalized and so forth. With the cost of, we have a contract, of course, with the company, and I believe it's over $5 million a year that provides health care for the inmates. And I assume that when we take them to the hospital, that we get the bills from the hospital as well, or do we?
No, the hospital bills go to our medical contractor.
Right.
However, we have the cost of staffing. You know, we have to provide an officer 24/7 for every person who's in the hospital. So that does, you know, that does create multiple additional full-time positions for each time we have a hospitalization that really aren't accounted for in our in our budget.
So the end result is that the taxpayers of Douglas County, the property taxpayers, are paying for that hospitalization through that contract, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay,
yes.
that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Mike, thanks again, and you've done an absolutely incredible job with taking care of literally thousands of people. So thank you very much. Your attitude toward your job, if I can call it that, your profession, is remarkable and very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morgan.
I'm echoing a little bit of what Mike said, but I think it's important for citizens to know of your passion, and whether it's 2 a.m. or whatever time, you're going there. I'm not sure when you sleep, but I know you're at that correction facility those hours when that need arises, and really care about the people that we have to house there. And I can't thank you enough. I don't think we could find anyone with the passion you have toward the citizens that happen to be there, unfortunately, and also your team that works with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm surrounded by a lot of wonderful people that
PJ wants to put something in the budget to build you an apartment in the basement.
Top floor.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments for the director? Okay, would entertain a motion to adjourn,
So move.
and we will stand
Thanks,
adjourned
Mike.
as the Board of Corrections. Thank you, Mike. We will now convene as the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. Could we please have the roll call?
Commissioner Borgeson. Commissioner Boyle.
Here?
Commissioner Kavanaugh. Commissioner Kraft.
Here.
Commissioner Morgan. Here. Commissioner Rogers. Mr. Chair.
Present. On the next action item, I will be looking for a motion to approve A and B. However, B should be changed to say approval of claims submitted for payment process through Monday, December 14th of 2020. This was at the clerk's request that we change this date.
I'll elaborate a little bit. There's some vendors, small vendors through the health department that we weren't able to get on today's list just because we didn't have significant documentation like a W-9 to even pay them. But they have indicated to us that it would be very difficult for them to have to wait until next Tuesday. And so the plan is to get them paid by tomorrow, Thursday the latest, but changing the date to Monday, December 14th gives us flexibility to go all the way up to the next meeting. But the intention is to get them paid ASAP.
Thank you.
Do you need some kind of a motion or anything? or-
Yes.
I'll make that motion to change the date to Monday, December 14th,
Is this a motion to approve A and B
Yes, it
with
is.
that change?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion and a second by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Morgan to approve A and B with the change to item B in the date to December 14th. Could we please vote?
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kraft voting virtually, all others present.
Thank you. This brings us to the consent agenda where we find items A through J. However, there is one item in there that is not quite ready for prime time yet, and that is item G, the CARES Act funding for 3 of our fire departments in the county, for Valley, Waterloo, and Boys Town. The paperwork just isn't quite done. These are all good. They will happen, but not for another week until the county attorney and everybody is comfortable with the paperwork on it. Therefore, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda less item G.
So move.
Motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Rogers. Questions or comments? Any items in here that anybody would like pulled out for individual attention?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Clerk?
Excuse
Oh,
me.
I'm sorry.
Well, the only thing I see is the first one of these resolutions here. Yeah, it's item A. The amount of money looks like a typo. It should have a comma instead of a dash. It should be
Oh.
22,800, I believe.
Okay, does that sound right, Kim? Yes, I see a nodding
Okay,
head.
just so that's clear.
Fine. Appreciate you catching the typo. Mr. Clerk, did you?
Yeah, another technicality as well. On item I-2, everything's fine. The correct version is before you, but on the website, there was a date on page 8 of the agreement. It was January 1, 2016 instead of January 1, 2021. So in case anybody was reading over that agreement and saw that date, it has been updated to 2021, and the correct version is before you.
Thank you for that clarification. Questions or comments? Anything on the consent agenda? Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you. On that item from the Health Department, item I, $420,700 with an agreement with the Department of Health and Human Services regarding public health emergency preparation. My question is just the source of those funds, and I don't know if someone can speak to that, but are these Douglas County general funds that are going forward to meet this obligation? Joe, you're shaking your head.
Joe Lorenz, County Finance Director. No, my understanding would be that since this is, they mention DHHS there, that this is probably being funded through DHHS, but it absolutely is not coming through the county general fund through taxpayer dollars.
Okay, I just asked because it simply says $420,700 budgeted.
So they had anticipated getting this money then in their budget?
From the state. Yeah, okay. My other observation is on C, resolution to accept an engagement letter with Fraser Stryker for legal services not to exceed $50,000. I just note that the compensation levels in there for the attorneys, which I don't question at all, are $325 an hour for the lead lawyer, $230 an hour for the associate, and $165 an hour for the paralegal. All three of these numbers are far in excess of what a court-appointed lawyer would receive for representing a defendant in Douglas County District Court for first-degree murder. I don't point that out because I think these are excessive. I point that out because I think that the compensation for court-appointed lawyers on capital cases, not being the equivalent of this case, which I don't think is a capital case, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a civil matter, is way out of whack. I mean, if we're going to value people's legal services, people who represent people in danger of losing their lives in the legal system might be compensated at a similar level to people who represent us on civil matters. I just point that out because it seems to me this is an ongoing disparity, and at some point we should hopefully try to adjust that. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? If not, I will call Commissioner Boyle.
Yes, on item number, I'm going to vote for it, but it's item A. What I would suggest that the county board consider asking our various departments, and this is not the first one that's come through from Ms. Havakati, and I don't have a problem with it, except that I think, excuse me, my experience is that there's a lot of talent in the Omaha public school system and others as well, but certainly OPS, for young people to come up with designs, and it helps them develop their skills and so forth. I think it'd be terrific if we could make a connection with the Omaha Public Schools art department and get their advice and see if there's some way we could start a program. I think it might work, but I'd like to see what we come up with that would further a young person's talent and be less expensive, frankly, but also the idea is to get them working using their skills as young people. So I make that suggestion for the entire county, whatever department there is. I think we ought to make that relationship. I suggest that.
And may I comment?
Commissioner Kraft.
Oh, yes.
That is, Commissioner Boyle, that is an excellent idea. I've seen excellent work there, but I've also seen very, very good work coming out of our youth detention center.
Yes.
You know, you walk the halls, you see the artwork, you go into the classroom, you see these wonderful, and I do mean wonderful, items they have created during their spare time or during their art classes. And with a little guidance, by accepting a design from them, we could change youth's life around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're absolutely right. And Commissioner Borgeson was involved in that. And recently I was in the Southeast Precinct, and there was a mural on the wall and it was painted by young detention people. So it's something we've done in the past. We kind of ought to restore that. So another good idea, Mark. I like that, Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you. Further questions or comments to the consent agenda? Good morning, Luis.
Luis Jimenez, 3306 Burt Street. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'd like to speak on item I-1. It's an agreement to build and maintain preparedness and response to bioterrorism, outbreaks of infectious diseases, and other public health threats and emergencies. I attended Mr. Kavanaugh's committee last week where Dr. Khan, world-renowned medical expert, spoke about his experience dealing with pandemics in the past and then dealing with his pandemic today, the COVID-19 pandemic. And so he spoke about components that are brought in that are used to deal with pandemics. And also he relayed that it will probably take until next year in the fall to get rid of the virus. And this is even after a vaccine is approved and distributed and people take the vaccine. There's still going to be, consequences of medical situations that the medical facilities are going to have to deal with, that the public is going to have to deal with. So I've been thinking that considering the last 4 years of misinformation, or what I would say the advent of misinformation, particularly with the president, and then also with the COVID-19 pandemic, that we were told it was a respiratorily transmitted disease from the onset. However, even this chamber, there's a lot of individuals that came forth and said, we have our own information, we have our own science, we have principles, and so on, which isn't necessarily to do with public policy and responding to the pandemic effectively. So looking at this item, how you talk about preparedness, I'm convinced that moving forward, there needs to be a component of dealing with misinformation, similar to, marketing or a campaign, getting media content out there that is put out before the public or a significant portion of the public accepts misinformation. I don't know where it's coming from. It must be from Trump Laboratories, that people think that we don't have experts that we can turn to, that public office holders have experts that you can communicate with, get their advice to deal with public health issues. So I don't have like a particular thing that I would say this would be the component to deal with the next public health crisis as it relates to getting proper and correct information to the public. But there's something there that I think the county, at least Douglas County, can incorporate so that we do have the best health department in the state, maybe in the country, or even the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Further questions or comments to the consent agenda before we vote? Good morning, Larry.
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I also would like to comment on item I, particularly number 1. particularly also with the elections that have ended. This is a time like I've never experienced and never heard about other than happening in European countries, for example. And I want to read something out of a Hillsdale College professor's classes, something he published with Hillsdale. When European governments of the past bypassed their constitutions by declaring emergencies, it was on the grounds of a military threat or a threat to public order. In America, as it has evolved since 1964, we declare moral emergencies. People are suffering, their rights are being denied. America can't wait anymore for the democratic process to take its course. Now, I want to take issue with that word, democratic, particularly with an election that has just finished. People do not understand that I do not directly elect a president. I have representatives that do that. Let's don't use that word democratic. That I have a copy of a page out of the Collegiate Dictionary. 9 different definitions of the word democratic. But our founders promised us a Republican form of government, which means you represent us, but I elected you, but the intent is I can tell you what to do. However, I can only speak to my own representative. And most of the time, they really don't want to hear or don't answer. The thought of this is, let's tread very quickly or very safely here. We don't expect to be taken over by emergency proclamations. There's been a couple of times recently where this or the other body in this chamber, at the end of a long day, brought up a proclamation because of an emergency and passed it so that public don't get an input to it. This has got to stop, or this country will be like those so-called democratic societies in South America, for example, that failed. Every democracy has failed. This is not a democracy. It's a unique republic. It might be representative, but it's unique. The majority in this room does not rule. The people do, but we do elect you. So let's stop this emergency proclamation bit and going down to the State House to legislate directly with them against our wishes. Real quickly, I'll end up with the other point of this article is that's exactly the kind of thing that affirmative action back in the 70s did. But that's not the story we're hearing. We want to go down and change our constitution in Nebraska to remove it. I remember affirmative action, and yes, indeed, it was used to override the rights of other people that are not of color.
Can we keep the comments to the consent agenda, please? I mean, this is discussion on the consent agenda, not on affirmative action. I would like the comments.
Oh, well, yeah.
Focus to what we're debating. Thank you, Larry. Further questions or comments to the motion before us? Okay, then I would call for the vote, please. This is for the consent agenda, less item G.
Item G?
G.
Consent agenda less item G. So the entire consent agenda minus that item. Commissioner Kraft, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Kraft voting virtually, all others in person.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is citizens' comments. Is there anybody that would like to address this board on any item that is not on the agenda? Okay, we will go down to, oh.
I did enjoy some citizens' comments. Luis Jimenez, 3306 Burt Street. Two things that are on the agenda. What's the proper way to speak at the podium, with or without a mask? With a mask?
Probably with.
I want to be understood. so this,
We can hear you with the mask on if you speak close to the microphone.
okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I disagree that Mr. Kraft is voting via Zoom. I think that you guys already have enough power as public office holders that the things that you do to represent us, like who you speak to, who you entertain, who you give access to, you already have a lot of power, and being present in a meeting is one of the few things that gives this structure a balance, check and balance. I think that there's plenty of people in the metro area in Douglas County that can sit in the board of commissioners. And if Mr. Kraft can't participate in person because of a health issue, then maybe he should resign and allow somebody else to participate or to sit in his seat.
Thank you.
That's one point. The other thing that I want to speak about is I'm not sure if you guys are going to be talking about the closeout of the CARES Act funding. Is that something you're going to be talking about when
It's not on the agenda.
when B comes up? You're not going to talk about how you're going to close out the millions of dollars that are going to be returned to the county?
We have already had that discussion. I'm not aware that we will be having it again today. It's
Okay.
not on the agenda.
Well, it hasn't happened yet. I want to comment that since you know how you're going to repurpose the money, you know that today, that there be more discussion and more information on how you're going to use those funds when they are when they are freed up. The money that is not spent, the CARES Act funding that is not spent, is going to be sent back to the county, and you're going to use that money to reimburse yourselves or reimburse the county for personnel expenses. And so when that happens, those millions of dollars will then not be allocated to anything. And I imagine that they're going to be used in service of responding to COVID. There's still plenty of help that can be put out. So it'd be interesting to know if you have an idea on how you're going to use $2.5 million that aren't going to be used. Mr. Kavanaugh had a good idea about using some of that money or using CARES Act funding, some sort of stimulus for-profit businesses. There is an idea floating around to get restaurants to provide meals to needy people during this time. Restaurants, the vast majority of restaurants are for profit. That's an idea. The money that will be freed up can be used during the time that there's a gap in funding. That is January 1st to when Congress decides to provide another CARES Act or another COVID-19 relief funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis.
Thank you, Luis.
Anybody else wishing to address this board under citizen comments?
Thank you. Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha 68132. I'd like to talk about consistency. In the previous discussion, I believe this young gentleman was off the topic slightly. He was not interrupted. I was. And I don't think that's necessarily fair under the Open Meetings Act. I'd like to see some of our representatives challenge some of these things. Also, while he was just up here, he was talking on something that was not on the agenda. And our chairman
Answer his
made some
question,
comment to
Larry.
him about that. There you go again, interrupting a citizen. I don't think you have the right to do that, Mr. Duda. After I'm through speaking, yes. He was not topic on the agenda with his last thing, and you interrupted him.
That's not correct.
To comment about, well, it wasn't on the agenda. It was his 5 minutes to talk about something, and you should not have interrupted him. Thank you. Mike.
Let's just let him speak.
Larry, could I this is not, when you read what it says is this is an opportunity for members of the audience to be heard at this time for a maximum of 5 minutes on any topic not on the agenda.
That's correct.
So he complied.
Yes.
This is not on the agenda, and.
So what was his thing about, well, we didn't talk about that, it's not, and it's not on the
Anyway,
agenda.
we try to be as
What
open
was
as
that
we
about?
can. Thank you.
Skip, thank you.
Thank you. Further citizen comments on anything not on the agenda? Okay, then I'm going to move along quickly before anybody changes their mind and go to the post-election update presented by Brian Cruz, our election commissioner. I see you brought Mr. Carruthers as well. The floor is yours, Brian.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, if I may, before we get started, Mr. Cruz gave me a hard copy of his handout, which I'm going to pass out, but I have other handouts for further items further down the agenda I'm just going to pass out now as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, good morning. Yes, Brian Cruz, Douglas County Election Commissioner, and Chris Carruthers, the Chief Deputy, is with me as well. And so, as everyone knows, we've had elections. Our democracy is alive and well, and we had large participation, which is great. Like to thank everybody who ran for office, those that were successful and those that were not. That's what makes our democracy successful. And to those of you here in the chamber this morning who were successful, to the clerk, Dan Esch, and to Commissioner Boyle and Commissioner Rogers, congratulations, and congratulations to all who won. So we appreciate your service. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Commissioner Kraft and Commissioner Duda for their great support of the Election Commission. It's been great getting to know both of you over the last 5 years. I think we've done some great things with your leadership, Chair Duda. It started when Mary Ann was chairwoman and continued into years when we got our new facility, but just the support in general. And so having grown up here in the Omaha metro area and Council Bluffs, but the Omaha metro area, known both of you for many years through the news media. And so thank you for your service, and I will miss working with you. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you need Karen?
Well, maybe, how do I flip to the next slide, Dan?
I can do that. I've got a hammer right here.
I did too. Oh. Sorry about this.
Yeah, just
Oh, just scroll.
scroll.
Okay.
Might go further beyond.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Dan. Okay, I think we are ready to go. So, obviously, there were some challenges in this election cycle. The first and foremost, of course, was the pandemic that happened in March. We knew this would be a big election year, but nobody could have ever guessed there would have been the pandemic, the worldwide pandemic. And as a result of the pandemic, poll worker recruitment was challenging, especially in March. It got better through the summer and much better into the fall for the general. And then, of course, the large number of early voters. We had 88% of those that voted early in the primary, and then 65% voted early in the general. So those were by far the largest number of early voters we'd ever seen. I thought maybe that if I stuck around long enough, that maybe I would see 50% early voting. And so I guess I've stuck around long enough to see that number be 50%. And then, of course, as many of you were aware, of course, we had the electrical outage on Friday, October 30th, one of our biggest days, if not the biggest day of early voting. But the staff all came together and we came up with a plan, and you just have to keep moving forward and remain calm, which is what we did, and let the voters know what the plan was. So that worked great. So I would just like to thank some folks. First I'd like to thank the staff at the Douglas County Election Commission. They were great through all of this with the ebb and flow, their ideas of how to deal with problems and just different issues that arose. And then I think many of you probably know or have met our elections manager, Justine Kessler. She has been the elections manager, I think, for about 12 years. She's been there longer than that. She actually started when she was in high school. And I'm telling you, the county should be very proud of her. She is one incredible female leader in this county, and she makes that office tick, and she makes elections happy. And so we are all have a in debt of gratitude to her for making that happen. The Secretary of State Evidence Office was great support to us, and specifically Andrew Bowler down there. I was on the phone with him sometimes 2 and 3 times a day, but at least 2 and 3 times a week. They were a great resource. He was available by phone nights, weekends, whenever we needed him. So we appreciate that. We had great citizen and voter support. People sent us thank you notes. They sent us notes of encouragement. Different places around the county provided meals for us. Voters would bring cookies into us wrapped individually. Rolls, Valentino's provided us pizza on several occasions. So, we're just, little things like that make a big difference when you're working 12, 15 hours a day. Our community partners, clearly we couldn't have done it without them. The polling places that we had, we appreciate all of them, the schools, the churches, the car dealerships, just everybody. And then, of course, the media. I think we're very fortunate here in Douglas County. The media is a great partner of ours. The news stations, the radio stations, the newspaper, they help us get our information out in a timely and accurate manner when needed. When we had that power outage, we started calling our partners, and they were right there to help us with that. So we really appreciate all of our media partners. Obviously, the election workers and the poll workers, and of course, the voters of Douglas County. They were great. They heeded our instructions. They worked with us, and they came out in large numbers. So we appreciate everybody. So just some quick presidential general statistics. I think many of you, we've seen these, but we had 570,000 registered voters for this election, 203 polling places. We had approximately 3,000 election day workers. And as I said, it was a little challenging in the spring to get election workers, and so we pared it down to 3 poll workers per polling place, but we made it happen. Our poll workers came through for us. In the general, we were able to do the 10 at the polling places, and we actually had, through the summer and the fall, we actually had 2,200 volunteers come forth to be poll workers, and many of those were younger ones. We've gotten so many comments that we had a lot of younger folks this time. So we hope that translates into their civic responsibility for the city elections and beyond. As a result of that, we had 860 draftees that we sent not needed letters to. So we did not need them. So it's, it's a great problem to have more than you need. So we were very appreciative of that. So the general election, I predicted a 70% turnout. We had 74.5% turnout, which is wonderful. We always challenge the voters of Douglas County to prove me wrong, and they did it this time, which is great. The previous record was when President Obama won in 08 at 72.6%. So 63.1% of the folks voted early, 35.5% at the polling place, and then we had 1.4% were provisional ballots. And the majority of those were at the polling place, but some were from the in-person voting. So just some early voting ballot statistics. We received 184,588 requests. 166,781 ballots were mailed. We had 14,282 in person at our office. And so we had a total of 181,063 ballots were handed out before Election Day. We had a 97.66% return rate. So most generally, if you get a ballot before the election, you're going to return it, as you can see here. And ballots returned via our drop box were 77.72%, which is great. And I'm happy to say, in the state of Nebraska, we know our messaging is you have to have your ballot returned by 8 p.m. on Election Day. Our messaging, I believe, has been effective and has worked. On Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday after the election, we only received 58 ballots between those 3 days that voters turned in afterwards. So I think that's incredible, especially with an almost 98% return rate. So the general election, just some provisional on the provisional voters. We had basically an 82% acceptance rate. So if you vote provisionally, there's a great chance that your vote will be accepted and counted. So the total provisionals this time were lower than historically for a presidential election. They're usually around 6,000. We had 4,671. And I put the top 3 rejection reasons there for the provisional voters. Those make up the vast majority of them. 309, so there was no voter registration in the county. So what that means is they were not registered in Douglas County by the voter registration deadlines. Voted in the wrong precinct or jurisdiction. So they either voted at the wrong polling place, but more importantly, they probably voted in Douglas County, but they're registered to vote in another county, Cass, RP, Lancaster. That's actually the vast majority of them. And then late registration, they actually registered to vote after the voter registration deadline. So they'll be registered to vote for future elections. It's just they were ineligible this time. But again, we always encourage voters, if they have any question at all, go and fill out that provisional ballot. We'll do the research behind the scenes. And as you can see, there's a great chance that the ballot will be accepted. So, we're right around the corner. Filing has started for city elections they started on December 1st. City elections are nonpartisan, meaning the top 2 candidates for mayor and in the 7 wards will go through. The last time I looked, I think we've got like 11 petitions taken out for mayor, and we have, I think, 35 or 40 total petitions taken out for the council and the mayor. Every city council ward at this time has at least 2 individuals in it. And the primary election is April 6th, and the general election is May 11th. So You know, we will see what happens. I'm guessing we're still going to have PPE precautions in place for April for sure, and probably May, to remain safe. But obviously, we're well equipped to do that, having been to elections. We've got the warehouse out there, and so we did not use all of our PPE this time, which is fine. So we do have a warehouse full of PPE for the city elections, and so we're well prepared for that. So, you know, I would just like to end this morning and thank everybody again, and maybe not necessarily on an election note, but I think if you watch the news this morning, there is jubilee across the world. Great Britain started the vaccination this morning. We know help is on the way. We know hope is on the horizon. So with that, stay healthy, everybody, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Commissioner Boyle.
Naturally, thanks for looking at me, Claire. You knew it had to be me. You know, I am so pleased at the level of work that you and Mr. Carruthers have brought to the office, and it's always been well run, but yours is absolutely incredible, just incredibly efficient. You work so well with everyone, and I'm just knocked out by what you do so well all the time. And the taxpayers are so fortunate to have someone, you know, a Republican and a Democratic team working together to make things happen. And so I like to see it because I'm, of course, quite familiar with it. I enjoy when I see all these recounts taking place and the ballots they hold up. You know, those were started right here in Omaha in 1976. We ran the first election, presidential election in '76, and Bobby Rosevich, after the primary, which was, you know, pretty hectic, and started at 4 in the morning on Tuesday and ended up sometime on Thursday about 2 a.m. just running around the clock. We got together and had a beer and we talked about it, and he said, "Would you be interested in seeing you know, another system like, you know?" And I said, "Yeah." So he talked about the ACT. So it turns out he had talked to him, and so we drove over to Iowa and saw this, and here this thing was running ballots that were phony, you know, just made up ballots. And he asked me, "When would you like to try it?" And I said, "Let's do it now." And it surprised him because it's a presidential general. And of course, the whole thing is we had the paper ballots. If it went to hell in a handbasket, you know, and it didn't. So anyway, it's really great to see you making that work. And I'm so pleased that Election Systems and Software, which is now the following company after all these different people were involved in it. I'm so glad to see the success that they have. And I smiled when the complaints were coming in about Detroit and Philadelphia and all the counting that was supposedly screwed up, and they were talking about this other company, and it turned out that it was ES&S who ran the elections, and there was no screw up. So anyhow, it's great to see that. And I think you know, one of the volunteers was my son Jim. He worked out west someplace. He lives out in France. And, so anyway, he worked out west and really enjoyed it, and he had volunteered. I didn't know he was going to. And you know, I think one thing I want to say, because of all this publicity about the election being fixed and so forth, you know, when you really think about it, you really need to think about that the people that you recruited and the people that work in the elections are citizens of Omaha, and they are Republicans, and they are Democrats, and they are independents. But you know what? When they open that door to go into the polling place to work, they're Americans. Mm-hmm. They're not going to screw around with the ballots. And first of all, how in the world do you do it when you're working with a bunch of strangers of the opposite party and all this? It was interesting to me, too. I know you've gotten phone calls about how come this could happen when, how could Vice President-elect Biden carry the 2nd district when our congressman won? Well, I'd seen signs around town with Biden and Bacon. And I frankly, you know, I was a supporter of Ms. Eastland. I've worked very well with Representative Bacon, and I'm still working on some things with them now. But I think it was what the party presented. You know, we were named as socialists and defund the cops and all this, and it was a terrible, terrible thing to do because most of us don't believe in that stuff. So, you know, I certainly don't. And I think that's why it happened. You know, people are smart. They're not stupid. People went in and voted for the person they thought should be up there, and then they came around and voted for someone who's not necessarily going to be supportive, but someone who presents himself well and did the deal, you know? So I don't have any, I understand it, I really do, and I think it shows that the voters are smart. They're not going to vote a straight ticket if they don't see what they like.
Absolutely. Well, and if folks remember, it happened in 2008. Lee
Yeah.
Terry won and
That's
Mr.
right.
Obama won.
I do want to mention, I think you told me, I know the red light's coming up, but I think you told me the World Herald printed that big ballot across. Did they charge anything for that?
No, and so I do,
Wow.
I will publicly thank them. We used to put the sample ballot in the paper, and we used to pay for that.
Yeah.
And that cost, well, 16, 18,000
Yeah.
back in the day when I first got there. And I asked the World Herald if they would consider doing that in, I think it was 18, as a public service, and they agreed. So they do that at no cost as a public service, and so I do thank them for that, because it does save the taxpayers a
See,
lot of money.
That's the good deal of having a conservative running for office. No, I want to thank you.
Or a
again.
cheapskate.
I'm the same way, but I never got that done. Hey, listen, thanks a lot, and you're a great team, and I'm so proud of you, what you did. It's just wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would quickly add to it, my congratulations. This was not exactly an uneventful election, but you ran it very smoothly, very efficiently. My daughter, Ann, has been a poll worker for years. She loves doing it, and she cannot say enough good things about you and your staff and the leadership that you provided through these 2 elections this year. She said the safety precautions, what you provided to them, the training, she just thought it was all top-notch and can't quit singing your praises. So
Well,
just
thank
want to
you.
throw that into the record. Further comments for Brian?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you. I'd like to add my sentiments to what a great job you did, Mr. Cruz, and your Chief Deputy, Mr. Carruthers, and your entire staff, really, under extraordinarily difficult circumstances, to set a record for voter turnout is truly remarkable. I think it also points to voting in the future. Part of that was vote by mail, and it's now 70% remote voting, basically, and I don't think that's going to change going forward. It's good because it allows more people to participate in our democratic voting process, and that's a good thing. So kudos to you and to Chris and to your entire staff. As you know, as I have since I was a child, worked the polls on election day, and there was a little glitch, nothing major. And you were Johnny on the spot in terms of responding to that, and it got resolved without a problem. I think that's an incredible hallmark of your administration, is that you're hands-on, you're accessible and responsive, and is always important in these things. You give an honest, objective, nonpartisan election result. That's all we want. We just want a fair election. So I just have a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
In light of everything that we've heard, most of it bogus around the country, was there any hint of election fraud in Douglas County in 2020?
No, there was not. And not only was there not here, but the Secretary of State, had reported as well that they didn't have any turned into their voter fraud hotline. I don't know if they have since. But to answer your question, in Douglas County, no.
Thank you. I think that's important to let people know. We have an honest, functioning voter system, and as you indicated, largely run by regular citizens like you and me, doing volunteer work for the greater good of the community. And it works. It works. There's no fraud. As far as I know, there has never been much fraud, if any, and this year was singular in its high vote and no fraud. It worked. We got an honest vote. We got an honest election. So thanks for presiding over that. The city election that's coming up.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but normally does not enjoy the high voter turnout that the presidential election does. Is that correct?
That's right. Typically, a general election in the city will be 30%. Now, having said that, last time when Mr. Mello ran against Mayor Stothert, we did have a 35% turnout. So, you know, maybe we're on the upswing there. We shall see. Again, I always prove the voters, in this case of Omaha, we prove them, you know, ask them to prove us wrong. We'll be prepared for 100% turnout. We always are.
Right. So in the municipal elections coming up, people will receive, like we did in the presidential election, a little green card if you want to order a ballot to do a mail-in?
So if you are on our permanent list, so if you're on the permanent list, the early voting request list, then you will receive that green postcard. So we sent it to everybody in the primary and the general, and gave them the option to sign up for that. So voters have now had the opportunity to sign up for that list or learn about early voting in 2 major elections. So yes, if you're on the list, you will get that postcard. You can go to our website and sign up on the list. I will tell you, there's about 180,000 people on that list in Douglas County. In the city of Omaha, I think it's about 140,000. So there's a significant number of folks on that list.
And in the 2020 general election, primary election, did we send it just to that list, or did we send it to everybody?
We sent it to everybody in both the primary and the general, and they did that statewide. The Secretary of State's office did that. We did it here in Douglas County,
Right,
and
right.
the Secretary of State
I think
did.
that probably contributed to our high voter turnout. Is there some prospect that we could send it to everybody for the municipal election as well?
You know, there's a cost to that, of course. I mean, a financial cost. But we feel like that the voters have had the opportunity to get on the list. We feel like they've had the opportunity to learn about early voting. And so, you know, it's not our intention to send it to everybody. I will say that. We have a large number of folks on the list. I think folks do understand early voting. And so it's not our intention to do that.
I appreciate that. And I don't expect you to answer this, but real quick, could you monetize what that would cost? You don't have to, I'm not putting you on the spot, just come back to us with a number.
I'd have to get back to you on that, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And congratulations again. Kudos.
Thank you.
And Chris, to you too.
Commissioner Morgan.
I was just going to thank you and also mention your partner there that you work so closely with, Chris. So, Chris, thank you for the, great teamwork you two have. That's a great thing and fortunate for us and the voters.
Thank you. Commissioner
Thanks.
Boyle.
I just have to throw my 2 cents in about corruption in the system. There was terrific corruption at the turn of the century in the 1900s. And it was then that it was really unbelievable what was taking place. But what happened is that when the machine, and at the time it's kind of ironic, it was a Republican machine, they would sign the names. They just take the book of registered voters and absolutely sign every name, the same handwriting, everything, and all the voters voted in order in which they lived. I mean, it was just unbelievable. But they threw so many elections, and so it's led to some of the laws that are still present. And one of them is, I think alcohol being served has been repealed, but it used to be you couldn't buy alcohol on election day. I don't pay attention to whether that's in place anymore. Another one is, people would call the office, maybe they called you and said, I didn't get to put my ballot, I didn't get to cast my ballot, because you hand it to a person, and it used to be there were more than one ballot, and they would count to be sure they had them all, because there was a system of sneaking the ballot out and giving it to the guy outside, and he'd mark for who he wanted and then give it to someone else, and they would switch. Chain voting would start, and they would elect people almost unanimously when that happened. It was nuts. So anyway, they stopped that. And then the other one is that the names on the ballots are rotated, because back in the 1900s, there wasn't a lot of literacy. People didn't necessarily graduate from grade school. Things happened. And so they would rotate the names, so they would the voters couldn't go in, just the people in the machines, you know. I spoke about this one time, and a fellow named Jimmy Silk, who worked for my father-in-law, actually, in the treasurer's office. Jimmy was an old guy, God, he was in his 80s in this audience, and I was telling this story, and I talked about, I've got copies of the NP Dodge Fair Election Law that I'll be glad to get to anyone who wants one. It's interesting reading. And what happened was, I said that there was a house on North 16th Street that had 45 people registered from it, a small house. And Jimmy stood up and he says, that was my house, and there were 74 people registered. And Jimmy was a Republican, and we laughed about that. That was the truth, and he knew all about it. Anyway, so it was there, and it's been solved with the election, NP Dodge Fair Election Law is what happened, and it's really an interesting read. So if anybody wants a copy, I've got some copies made. So, but it's so great you asked that question, Mr. Kavanaugh, because all this talk of fraud is so disturbing. It tears at the fiber of what we believe in and the job that you do. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Borgeson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just wanted to add my thank yous for the job well done for you and Chris and your staff and all of the poll workers and volunteers. I did have one question though, so on your website, for someone who wants to know if they're on that permanent list, is there a way to go on the website and find that out, or do they just call your office and ask?
Just call our office and ask.
Okay.
Now, there's a form on there under the early voting that they can fill out. So if they're not sure, they can also fill out that form. And they can return it by fax, email, take a picture with their cell phone. And it's not going to hurt anything. If they're already on the list, we won't have them again. But they can sure call and check, and I will, that's a good suggestion. I'll see if there's something we can do there.
Yeah. And then the second question is, for, say someone is on the list, and they're deceased, is your office to be contacted, or is there a way again on the website to go in so those don't keep going out?
Correct. So we get agency sharing. So we get from the Department of Health and Human Services every Friday. We get a death report. And then individuals do tell us. And then what we do is we take our voter registration file and we will scrub it or match it up with that list. And so we will keep that list clean in that manner. You know, and I think another important note is if you do get the green card in the mail, if you don't want to vote early, you just simply don't return it. You know, if you want to go to the polling, say you want to go to the polling place this time, then don't return it. You only sign it and return it if you want to buy mail ballot. So if you want to go to the polling place, just hang on to it or dispose of it.
And then my last question on the provisional
Yes.
ballots, was that an increase or a decrease in what we'd seen previously for provisional ballots?
It was a decrease in presidential numbers. So we usually get around 6,000. So we drove that number down to, I think, almost 4,700. Now, I will tell you the percentage that was accepted, the 81.9%, that's pretty consistent over all elections, city, generals, primaries, statewide. We've got about an 81, 82% acceptance rate. So that was right on the money.
Okay, thanks. Great.
Well, thank you all very much, and
Thank you, Brian.
look forward to the city elections.
Indeed.
Have a happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Congratulations.
All right. This brings us then to item B, CARES Act update. We have 3 items for consideration this morning. We will turn to our Finance Director, Mr. Joe Lorenz. Good morning, Joe.
Morning, Commissioners. We are starting to wind down the CARES Act. As you know, that the projects have to have the money expended at this point still by December 30th. So given that we are in the wind down and closeout phase, So this morning we have 3 items. The first item is held over from our last meeting on November 24th, and this is Catholic Charities' request for $667,700 of CARES Act money for new HVAC equipment at 2 of their facilities, and this would assist in mitigating the COVID-19 virus. And I think I will turn it over to Commissioner Boyle, who's kind of sponsoring this, to talk to it some more.
Thank you. This item is going to be removed from the agenda after discussions with some of the commissioners and also with Catholic Charities. I should tell you that this was put on the agenda at my request because I contacted them when I was working so closely with Juan Diego Center and the other centers, not necessarily in my district, and I know the kind of workload that's happened and the special needs of Catholic Charities. And I did ask some of the commissioners, and the response I got was, well, there's other nonprofits that need this money as well, and I suppose they've been asking these commissioners, and so they said no deal. And so this was kind of, in their eyes, beyond what we should be doing. So it is a very worthy application. It has merit. It's met the requirements of the CARES Act and so forth, but I don't think it has the support on the county board. So it is much needed improvements. There's no question about it. And so at my suggestion, not Catholic Charities, we talked about this, and they decided they did not want to be turned down. There'd be a misunderstanding, and I can see that. So these are the people, along with the Salvation Army and Together and all these agencies in town, that are just absolutely incredible. The work they do for the poor, these agencies, and the very least of us, is just, it's God's work. They provide food, shelter, and do things for people in the most dire situations, domestic violence and all the rest, some of these things that are happening in our county. So it may come back another time, but it is needed, that's for sure, because they have women and children that they're taking care of, and they should have the best of what we can give them. So I'm withdrawing it so that I don't want it to fail, and I think it's going to fail before this board.
All right. So there is no motion then, at least today,
No.
to approve item 1. With that, unless somebody else wishes to make the motion, it is on the agenda. All right. With that, we will move to item 2.
Okay. Item 2 is a internal request from a county department. This from the county attorneys to allocate $20,727 to their budget for reimbursement of CARES Act funds for eligible expenses. And these were, as you know, were a few people within the county attorney's office who did have COVID. The county attorney's office is spread out over probably 2 or 3 areas, and this was the money that they came to me that they said that they spent on primarily PP&E to try and mitigate any impact of the COVID virus on the physical layout of their department. So they're requesting the $20,727 to go to their budget to reimburse them.
Thank you. Unless somebody has an objection, I would like to handle items 2 and 3 together. We have 2 CARES Act. Unless anybody wants them separated, I would like to also include item 3.
Right, and item 3 comes from the Public Building Commission, and this again is for PP&E for the 4-month period, September 1st to December 30th, and these were expenses incurred in the facility here to sanitize and provide PP&E equipment in the Civic Center, in the courthouse. And over that 4-month period, they incurred $153,879.58 in expense that they would like to be reimbursed for.
We have a motion by Commissioner Borgeson, second by Commissioner Rogers, to approve items B, 2, and 3.
I've got a question on the county attorney.
Okay, Commissioner Boyle.
I looked at the county attorney, and I've been a little bit puzzled. I'd like to ask, maybe I hope you can answer the question, Joe. Let me get back to where it is here on the computer. Let's see, it's, what I was looking at is these computer and printer equipment, I don't understand what, huh?
We've
Oh,
got somebody
good. Okay,
coming
great.
down that
Good, okay.
can help answer that, I believe.
Commissioners, good morning. Shaquille Malik, County Attorney's Office.
The questions I had, I guess what you're asking for is this, let's see, you're not asking for computers, you're asking, and the cell phones aren't involved, are they? Tell me, what is the is it 20,727 you're asking for?
Yeah, so there's a mixture of items here, Commissioner. On the attached ledger sheet, it's broken into 3 categories.
Right.
The leftmost is, it is some computer equipment. What we had to do when we went to shut down initially in the spring and then subsequently is we had to transition a lot of our operations so employees could work from home.
Okay.
So some examples are when you see the 199 charges, those are these giant printer scanners, inkjets that we had to send home so people could still do pleadings and do documents and handle court operations from home and scan and discovery and all that. The large charge, the 14,770, that was for 15 laptops so people could still work from home. There's some other charges, the 179.98, that's for webcams so people could do the remote court hearings because the juvenile county court and district court, primarily district and juvenile court, went to WebEx and remote hearings. So that's a sampling of the items on the leftmost column. The middle column is both cell phone monthly charges and for a couple of cell phone expenditures. And what that is primarily on our heavy customer-facing employees, so our domestic violence liaisons, so they could take victim calls still at home and not have to use their personal phone. We had receptionists at our different divisions getting cell phones issued. What we've done, though, as employees have transitioned back, though unfortunately with the recent spike we've had to move some back home, is we have canceled some of those lines of service as they've been not needed. And what we tried to do when we acquired those lines is to get phones that were at no cost to us where we just had to pay for the service. So that's that middle column of cell phone charges. And then the rightmost column is basically a mixture of mass. I think right now I'm well over 2,000 of these for use because we have to give them for both our employees. The courts require us to have them for witnesses and victims we bring to court. When we do depositions, we have to have them available for people coming on board. And then also for quite a bit of sanitizing, both hand sanitizer and also surface disinfectant, because every time we have witnesses or anyone in our conference rooms, we have to disinfect the whole thing. So we've been trying to stay on top of it as best we can, but that's kind of a general breakdown of what those costs are that we're asking for reimbursement for, Commissioner.
Thank you. Your explanation helps, but I'm not really sure when I look at the bottom line of this worksheet with the 3 columns. The first one on the left says 18,286.81. Oh, okay, so then you add those 3 together and that gives you the 20,727.
Correct, Commissioner.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, that answers that. I understand you have to do this remote, and I think it's probably a good investment. And thank you for the explanation.
I mean, yeah, long term, we see this being very beneficial for us for operations. Yeah. I think going forward, we made a lot of efficiency improvements.
Good. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the explanation.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'll be voting for it.
Further questions or comments to the motion before us? If not, I would call for the vote on items B, 2, and 3. Oh, Larry, hold off on voting.
Sorry to interrupt. Larry Storer, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha. I'm going to be against this for this reason. As I look through all these funding requests from both county and city, and on this item, an agency, Catholic Charities, is requesting the money. My goodness, $667,700.
And that's not before us. There was no motion to approve item A. The only thing we are considering is items B and C, and you're referencing item A.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Further questions or comments to the motion before us? Then, Mr. Clerk, would you please call the vote?
I vote yes.
Commissioner Rogers and Kavanaugh.
Here comes Kavanaugh. Thumbs up, Jim?
Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Kraft voting virtually, all other commissioners voting yes in person.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, Mr. Cohen. Next is on the agenda is the budget report. Commissioners Morgan or Boyle, anything to share at this point on that?
We still have some money, don't we, PJ? Still have some money in the bank? Okay, yeah.
We're good,
We'll,
as presented.
and for those who, I know Luis was interested in more information, and if you'd give me a call, we'll do our best to get you the information you need. So let me know.
Thank you. Okay, Douglas County Youth Center report. It says Brad Alexander, but the reality is we get Kim Havakati. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning, Kim Havakati, Deputy County Administrator over Juvenile Justice Reform. You should have a handout available. What I am doing this morning is to give some updates both on our juvenile justice initiatives and then also the point-in-time data from the Douglas County Youth Center. There's a couple of first dates on the first slide that I'd like to make everybody aware of because it does affect all of our community providers and also the constituents. And that's with regards to our community-based grant funds. These are funds that flow through the Nebraska Crime Commission. We're not sure exactly what amount Douglas County will be getting for the upcoming 2-year time period. We anticipate that it will be around $1.6 to $1.7 million. Our application is due to the state by March 25th of 2021. It is now going to be a 2-year grant. So we've had to start and will be starting the request for applications. As you can see by the slide, our request for applicants will be released on December 16th of 2020. They are going to have to be returned to Douglas County by January 11th of 2021 at 5 p.m. We will be having next week a meeting with all of the potential grant applicants. I think we've invited about 300 people to it, so that we can give them the exact form that they're going to have to fill out to apply for any community-based grant aid for the county. We also will and have scheduled for the next 3 weeks between now and January 11th, well, really 4 weeks, we will be having weekly technical assistance meetings that anybody can call in to have help in writing their grant requests from the county. So we're trying to be as accessible as possible. As you guys know, under our grant procedures for this grant, there is an advisory council that has been put into place by the commissioners. We have had 2 meetings with the advisory council. We will be meeting with them on February 1st to review all of the grant applicants that the county has received for these community-based grant funds. That advisory council then makes recommendations to the Juvenile Justice Stewardship Group, and then it will come before the county board the beginning of March on 2021 as to the county's actual grant application to the state. So if you know of any community providers out there that are wanting to apply for community-based grant funds, please let them know these time periods are set, and we will gladly work with them to assist in getting their application in. The other thing we have been working on that is required in order for us to get our community-based grant funds is a Douglas County Community Plan. That community plan has to be submitted by March 5th of 2021 to the Crime Commission. If we do not submit that plan by March 5th of 2021, we are not eligible for the grants for the next 2 years. So we are working on our community plan. We have had one meeting with over 300 people invited from the community to help us work on the community plan. We have another 2-hour virtual meeting set for tomorrow. We have come up with the 5 priorities that the community feels we should be working on. And then tomorrow we will be working directly on what are those action steps to implement those priorities that the community feels are important in the area of juvenile justice. Part of this community plan will involve a community assessment of youth and families. We're looking at the youth and families needs assessment. In other words, what do our youth and families needs in our community, and what do those providers and program services need to look like? So we have been working on that. It will come before each of you probably beginning to mid-February for your review, because it does require county board approval. And like I said, it has to be filed by March 5th of 2021. Other things we've been working on in the prevention area is a status offense diversion system. As each of you know, we do have a nationally recognized juvenile assessment center for our delinquent youth. As a county, we do not have a process for our status offense youth. Those are our truant youth. Those are our youth that are missing. Those are our youth that are having mental behavioral health issues. We have been working diligently and looking at ones from across the country. Most areas call them family resource centers. We have worked and are continuing to work with UNO, with the university, to assist us in this process. So in the next couple of months, you should be getting more information on that. One of the other prevention areas we've really been working on is alternatives to high school completion. As you know, for many of our youth that are in the youth center or in juvenile justice, they are academically behind in school. And for some of them, they are so far behind academically, they have extreme difficulty in getting their high school diploma. So we are working with, and Metro Community College and the Department of Education are putting together a plan to assist us with these youth in order so that we can help them get their high school diploma. Last one is job training programs. Working with Metro Community College and community providers, we do have available scholarships for youth that do have their high school diploma to go to Metro free, books, tuition, everything. So if you know of any youth out there, I'm more than willing to get them qualified, but we feel that's a positive thing for our youth to show that there are areas of ways they can do things. Formal processing, youth charged as adults. You're going to hear me talk about in just a little bit the data at DCYC. We are still sitting with about 50% of our youth within the youth center that are youth charged within the adult criminal system. So what have we been doing and working on? We have collected all of the data for every youth in 2019 and 20 that was booked into DCYC as an adult. We have created a database where we have collected information of were they involved in the child welfare system? Were there ever any missing youth reports? Did they have previous juvenile court exposure, or were they involved in that? Then we have also looked at how the court case is going. In other words, how long did it take? Why did it take long? We all know for most of these youth sitting in DCYC, the average length of stay right now is about 160 days. So we've got to look at those pieces. That data has all been put into a database, and once our data administrator starts January 4th, it will be her first job by which to analyze all this data. So hopefully by February 1st, we can give an analysis to each of you as to what these youth are looking like and ways that we can work on the issue. We have been successful in including these youth in our juvenile detention alternative initiative, both at the state level and at the local level, so that we can start doing some alternatives to detention for these youth charged as adults. We've met with the district court judges. We hope to have more meetings with them to make them aware of our alternatives to detention that would be available for these youth other than just setting a bond. As you know, for most of our youth in detention, a $5,000 bond really does not help that youth or family much. We are also working with the Chief Justice and Administrative Office of the Courts on the computer system. They are going to be doing updates to the state computer system so that our judges are more aware of these cases through the computer system rather than just relying on it. The other good news is this last legislative session, Douglas County did get extra funding for our young adult courts, so they're able to double in size. So we have been working with them to request and find out ways that we could have our 16 and 17-year-olds that are in detention being included within this young adult court. Last but not least, we've been working on some statutory changes with some senators. I have been reviewing some legislation that various senators have sent me this week, both regards to where youth are being charged. Are they being charged in adult court or juvenile court, and what would be the proper way for that to happen? But then also working on legislation with regards to time periods on these cases and ways that we can make them go faster in the system. So hopefully after the legislative session starts, we will see some of those bills, and then I will bring them before each of you for you guys to consider and see what's happening. With regards to detention, home program. We are still expanding the home program to include stability services. Right now, as you know, the home program is strictly electronic monitors. We do have the okay with OJJDP to use our Title II funds to assist in paying for these services. When we've looked at the data on our pre-adjudicated youth, once we can do these stability services along with our monitor, we anticipate that we can get between 5 to 8 of these youth out a month, that they could remain in their homes because they're low enough risk. We just need the services to also provide in those homes to keep the community and youth safe. And then, of course, within DCYC, we still have our crisis response team. Our behavioral health initiative is still going forward, and I know that you guys have seen a presentation on our behavioral health initiative. The one area that the behavioral health initiative has been working with us on at DCYC over the past month is to help us develop and use a validated screening tool at the time a youth is booked, and also assessments for youth from a mental behavioral health standpoint, so that we are catching those youth that are high suicide risk, that maybe have high mental behavioral health needs. We have the wonderful behavioral health initiative. We want to make sure that we are maximizing the use of it and screening the right youth into that program. We also, of course, had the Douglas County Youth Center Expediter. That position will be dedicated and start working towards these stability plans. The way it works in juvenile court, if a youth is arrested today, they'll go to court tomorrow by 1 or 2, where a judge determines if a youth remains detained or not. If the judge orders that that youth remains detained, there will be another detention hearing in about 7 to 10 days to determine whether or not the youth needs to remain detained or if the youth can get out. It is our goal within that 7-day time period to do more screenings and assessments on these youth, to develop these stability plans, to bring before the court at that detention review hearing so that the judges can let them out. Right now, our average length of stay for our pre-adjudicated youth, you'll see in the data in just a little bit, is 85 days. If we can reduce that time period down from 85 days to 7 to 10 days, A, it is better for the youth. B, of course, it is fiscally better for the county. And C, it will reduce our number of youth in the Douglas County Youth Center. Last but not least is we were one of 2 recipients. I know you approved it on the agenda last week for the OJJDP room confinement and recidivism grant. That's a 3-year grant for $600,000. We will begin working on that grant January 1st. The key things this grant will allow us to do is allow us to hire a manager of mental behavioral health services dedicated to the Douglas County Youth Center. Right now, we do not have that. We need that position in order to meet the needs of our youth there. There will also be the implementation of motivational interviewing for all staff and of an evidence-based program, de-escalation program called Target. That will be for staff and youth, and then there is an external evaluation process. One of the things that is key and the reason we are excited for this grant, when you look at our data at DCYC, we have about a 79% readmit rate. So that means 79% of our youth in detention had been there previously. Obviously, we need to work on the community piece side of it, but you also at the same time have to work internally within our detention facility to make sure that we're assessing and figuring out what the needs of the youth are so that when they get in the community, we have the right services. So on the next slide, because we're almost at the end of the year, we felt it would be more relevant to give you some Douglas County Youth Center data from a point in time. At our next presentation in January and February, we will give you the longitudinal data over the last 3 to 5 years, but let's talk about point in time. So I pulled the data as of November 30th of 2020. On that date, we had 67 youth there, and I can tell you between last Monday and today, we have fluctuated between 60 to 66 youth. But on that Monday, we had 67 youth. 63 of the youth were from Douglas County. 4 of the youth were from another county. They were from Sarpy County. Currently, we have a contract with Sarpy County that runs through December 31st of 2021 to accept Sarpy County youth. That contract ends in a year. So then we will not be accepting Sarpy County youth. We do not have to accept Sarpy County youth. It is something that we have done. So really right now we have 63 youth that were from Douglas County. As you can see, 86% are male, 14% are female. I don't think that's surprising. Commissioner Kavanaugh, when you look at the disproportionality, it is right there glaring in front of you. 13% of our youth detained are Caucasian, 60% are Black, 25% are Latino, and 1% are Asian. So I don't care how you do those numbers, it's 87% are youth of color in our detention facility. 79%, like I said, are readmits. That's too high. We have been working on that piece. Good news is for the next data, when I looked at the data from 3 to 4 years ago, most of our youth were coming back into detention for technical violations. In other words, they were on probation and they did something. But you can see now from the data, it's done a flip. So 63% of the youth in detention on November 30th were there for new charges, while only 37% were there for technical violations. So we're at least doing a much better job, and thanks to state probation, who has worked very diligent on creating a graduated sanctions program, that for youth on probation, they are not being placed back in detention. They are doing some other type of sanctions and positive reinforcement for youth. So stage in the court proceedings, because this is what impacts Douglas County from a fiscal standpoint. 14 of the youth on November 30th were pre-adjudicated. In other words, they weren't on probation, which means they are Douglas County responsibility. 18 of the youth were adjudicated youth, so they are on probation. And 35 of the youth are charged in adult criminal court. So when you look at that, that is more than 50% of youth right now are charged in juvenile court. So going on with the data, what type of charges do these youth have? Again, this has been a major change, which is positive. Not positive we have youth committing felonies, but positive that we don't have youth committing minor offenses in our detention facility. 21 of the youth have felony charges in juvenile court. 11 of the youth have misdemeanor charges in juvenile court, and 35 of the youth that are in adult criminal court have felony charges. So most of the lower level misdemeanor charges are no longer appearing in juvenile court. Current age of the youth, as you can see, they run from 14 to 17. Majority are 16 and 17-year-olds. We do have 4 14-year-olds. Average length of stay. Some of this average length of stay, when you look at November 30th, I do feel and do believe is COVID related, because of the way the court systems have had to operate, because of the way a lot of our facilities have had to operate, or they're requesting a 2-week quarantine time period before they'll take the youth to ensure that the youth does not have COVID. But 85 days is our average length of stay for pre-adjudicated youth. For youth on probation, it's 31 days, and then you'll see for the adult criminal court, it was 147 days. I know this is hard to read, so I printed out, and you should have for you, Commissioner Borgeson have requested a geographic location by zip code. This is from December of 2019 through November of 2020 by zip code, and then the number of youth that have entered Douglas County Youth Center by those zip codes.
Can you give us the numbers? We can't read them.
Sure, if you go to the last page, Commissioner, there's a big copy of just that one. That makes it more readable. How's that?
That's fine.
Does that help?
Yep.
Okay. So that is the geographic location. I don't think, as you can see, the three main zip codes, 68104, 68111, and 68107. So I'm going to give you a COVID update for DCYC, and then I have to give you another update of the update. Because as we know, this is a very transitional time period. I have to say, in my personal opinion, our Douglas County Youth Center has done a wonderful job that we have had no youth testing positive for COVID since March until Friday.
Wow, that's great.
Until this past week, okay? But we know the numbers are higher in the community, so we're not surprised. So when I completed this, we had one youth that had tested positive while in quarantine and remains in quarantine. We have had 26 staff since March test positive. 23 have recovered, 3 are currently positive. 10 of the staff we have are currently quarantined. Now, what has occurred since that time period, because we did some tracing, so now we have 3 more youth, more girls. So we now have 4 youth that have tested positive for COVID since Friday. All of them are quarantined. They were able to trace that and figure out how it all occurred. So the 4 youth are now being quarantined. We also have 1 positive male in the facility that's also been in quarantine, but because of this, Brad is ensuring that all DCY staff are going to be tested and are being tested this week, just to make sure. The other important thing that I want everybody to realize that during all this time period, that all programs and services within DCYC have continued. Yes, it's been on virtual platforms, but we have not had any programs not go forward, and that our educational programs are continuing to go forward through virtual platforms. So we are meeting the needs of the youth, it's just in a little bit different capacity. And then I have one thing I'd just like to talk to the commissioners about in remembrance. DCYC lost a very important staff member on Thanksgiving. Dr. Jim Mattison, who was the clinical psychologist at DCYC for many, many years, and really had a passion for our youth at the facility, passed away from COVID at 50 years of age on Thanksgiving Day. So the staff really would appreciate if the commissioners acknowledged all of his work, and also for his wife and his 2 kids, because this man did dedicate hours and hours to our youth and their mental behavioral health. So I just wanted the county commissioners to be aware of Dr. Jim Mattison.
Yeah, we'll do that.
And we can do a resolution with regards to it.
We will.
And that is all I had, so I can take any questions.
Thank you, Kim, for a good report. Commissioner Morgan.
I'd just like to really compliment you on a very positive, outstanding report, and also very appreciative of the work you've been doing these past year. it's really most positive. I mean, the numbers they speak for themselves, the 63. So thank you so much for the good work you've been doing, really.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have any comments, Commissioner Boyle? Okay.
The only word I can think of about this report is spectacular. This is really, really useful. And I made some notes. It really is. This is so easy to follow. I do wish, to tell you the truth, when you make the comments about something that's it's not printed, and the comments are spectacular as well. And I wish they were in parentheses or something about, but anyway, that's pretty impossible. I really do appreciate this a lot. It's really helps a great deal to have this kind of information. And it seems to me, one of the persons that I've observed over time is in a larger city in San Francisco, and it's no relation but Father John Boyle, who's a Jesuit, and he has done some things, and I follow him. He spoke in Chicago with Cardinal Supich from Omaha and all that kind of thing, and I kind of follow that archdiocese, see what's going on. And anyway, he is the one who started with working with gang youth. He started a bakery, and they sell it all around the country. And I think, and this goes with the men's jail as well, I think we need to get jobs. We need to get them jobs that are, and I've thought about, to tell you the truth, I've thought about going to one of these big garages in town, like Jensen's. They've got 12 or 13 outlets, one up here on the street, and trying to send these young men who have mechanical aptitude up there to change tires and start working and doing things like that and find a purpose. I think we need to make those kind of connections rather than trying to set up something ourselves. At the men's facility, I've actually thought about, and I haven't told Mike about this, but putting a garage right there on the premises, and trying to help, get these guys going. But somehow there has to be a connection, because to me, poverty and lack of jobs those are two of the biggest problems. There are a lot of others, but those are big problems. I was in Washington at a meeting, and I turned on the TV, and I'm kind of a geek. So I was watching the school board of Washington, D.C., and their meeting. And you know that to much controversy, they decided, we've had enough of this trying to figure out what's wrong. So they said, we're going to go into the homes of all of our students. Well, you can imagine the uproar that caused. It didn't work, but they wanted to find out, what's going on. Other school systems they discovered, this is off the track a little bit, but they discovered that a lot of the students didn't have a washer or dryer, no way to clean their clothes. And they put some laundry facilities right in the school, Good approach. But anyway, I want to thank you very much. This is really excellent. And one of the things that I've spoken about is the judges, you have these young people with 147 or 150 days. What I'd like to see is, and it's something just as simple, I believe, I'm an outside critic in this case, but numbering the case system so that the files, so when the judge has a stack of files in whatever form or whatever it is, or a list or something else, that instead of the Douglas County District Court file number, we have to talk to Mr. Friend about this, but give it a juvenile number of some sort that is in the adult court. So, put it in orange and put it in a file that says JUV and then whatever it is, so that the judge knows this is a person who's sitting there waiting for action, and it's really critical. I'd like to see something like that. I don't think it'd be a stretch. The court administrator over there could help us out, but I'm not going to talk much more about this. There's so many things I'd like to say that I really think this is really, really valuable. I do have a question on why are we not going to take Sarpy County anymore?
It's more of bed capacity. I think our agreement can remain for Sarpy County, but it really has to be looking at our bed capacity, because we should give priority to our Douglas County youth. And as you are aware, Sarpy County does have a detention facility. it is a staff secure detention facility, not a secure one like ours. So the main youth we are getting from Sarpy County are ones that need secure facility, but I know we need to start having discussions with Sarpy County on some of that.
You know what else I think we need a good discussion on is that, the Sherwood Foundation is building, as you well know, a facility north of 56th and Ames on the Lutheran Church property. It's supposed to take, I understand, close to 40 young people. I'll quit. But anyway, I talked to Nick Giuliano, and I said, who are those children? And he said, well, they're the children who are not charged as adults. So that seems to take out some of our load. But somewhere in there, I think we need to work a lot closer. No, I'm sure we're working closer. I shouldn't have said that. That's criticism. I don't mean it. I'd like more information about who's going there and what the possibilities are. So, but thanks a million. This is really great. And
I can get you that information as it goes forward.
Okay.
That's in its infancy stage.
Yeah.
But I think within the next 4 to 6 months, there will be a lot more information with regards to that facility.
Okay. And somewhere along the line, we need to talk to the Jail Standards Board. Thanks.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you. Further questions or comments from Ms. Havakati? Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you for this. A couple of questions. I think that the, format that we're used to getting from Mr. Alexander and the format here are a little different, so I'm just trying to reconcile the two. Because when we're dealing with terms of art like average daily population and average length of stay, I know that there's always some difficulty in getting the same apples and apples. So just so you can clarify for us, on page 4, DCYC data that indicates total population of 67 youth. As I read that, it says a point in time data as of November 30th, 2020. Correct. So that was, as of November 2020, there were 67 youth at the Douglas County Youth Center.
Correct. That's point in time data that as of November 30th, 2020.
Okay.
This is what the youth look like.
Yeah, I get it. So different than the average daily population number, which would be a different number.
Which would be a different number. So at our report in January, we could then give you 2019 and 20's average daily population per month. This is just a slice of a point in time as to what the youth that are there look like.
Sure. So normally when Mr. Alexander gives us his monthly report, we have an average daily population number. Is he going to come before us and deliver that?
Well, that's the plan, whether in January or in February, whenever the board requests that we come and give what I call the longitudinal data, which would look at the averages over the last year or 2 years. Yes, then Brad will be here and we'll be presenting the longitudinal data. I do think it's important always, though, to also look at the point in time data, that you really got to look at both data.
I understand what you think is important. What I'm saying is we have been receiving average daily population data, okay? I would appreciate getting average daily population data. I don't mind getting this data, more is better, but do you happen to know what the average daily population is over the last month?
We can run it and get it to you.
I would appreciate that.
I hate to say a number because I don't know if it's 63, 67, 72, but we can gladly run at least through November 30th what the average daily population was.
That would make it consistent with previous reports from Mr. Alexander, and I'd appreciate that on our monthly reports if we're going to get them from you going forward, which is fine. The same with the average length of stay. I note that we have basically 3 numbers, 85 days for pre-adjudicated youth in juvenile court, 31 days for adjudicated youth in juvenile court, and 147 days for youth in the adult criminal court. And I appreciate the difference, the distinction there. That's not an average length of stay number. So, just to clarify, the 2 numbers we're looking for is how many kids are in this facility, average daily population for the month, And how long do they stay there? Average length of stay for a month. You can break it down like this, and that's fine, it's good to know, but it doesn't give us those two prime metrics. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, a point in time will not, a longitudinal will. And I could get you the average length of stay. Part of it is, Commissioner, I think as we look at average length of stay, we really have to look at the average length of stay for each of the various populations.
And I appreciate that, Council. I'm just saying what I want is average length of stay for the population, average daily population for the population on a monthly basis, okay?
We can do that.
Okay. The reason this is so important is, as you're aware, we received, you did, a jail standards letter from the Crime Commission that says we haven't supplied them with information on the new proposed kids jail relative to these questions because they question whether or not the average daily population, which they have at 80, and the proposed kids jail capacity at 52, 56, is something that they can certify. This is a huge problem. I mean, if that construction project over there doesn't have certification from the Crime Commission, they can't receive any kids. And I know that this has been going on for some time because they note in the letter that Douglas County has not responded to prior requests for this information. And there is on file a letter from July 5th, 2019 from our Omaha group pointing out this exact same disparity. So we've got a huge, huge problem here because the construction project needs the authorization of the Crime Commission's jail standards, as we pointed out in 2019, to operate at all. And they say, if it can't, then you use the 42nd Street location, which is fine by me, and I think that's a much better option anyhow. But this is a huge, huge problem, and I don't expect you to answer what you're going to do about it here today, but we need to have a robust discussion on this going forward because it's going to spill into 2021 when we have a new board, and that's going to be our responsibility.
Thank you. Commissioner Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me I'd like to pick up on that by saying that 42nd Street is not a much better option. The reason why 42nd Street is not a better option is because vernacular is used all the time here referring to using a derogatory term as a kids jail.
Yep.
42nd Street is the kids jail. 42nd Street was designed in a time where you had adult facilities concept being put on juveniles. The facility that's being built now is a trauma-informed facility built to not exaggerate or build on any existing behaviors that kids have. So let's go then to discussion said about that implies that the numbers being seen now are being played with. And that's how I interpret that. The numbers that have been broke down now give a truer interpretation because things are merged together and put as if all of these kids that come there are a threat. As been broke down, there's 35 kids that really are the threat, if you want to define it that way, but that have done a serious offense that are there. Under the standards in Nebraska juvenile law, all those other kids are rehabilitative. And that's the point we're trying to get at the programs with. And as Ms. Avocati mentioned, trying to then chip away at that 35. Those numbers are important because the 80 represents the supposed 80 because over the last month or so, that average has been in the 60s. Actually, at one time this year, cracked like in the 50s. A little bit of it is COVID, but a little bit too of it is change of practice. And so the breakdown is relevant because the public needs to understand that if you consider certain offenses a threat, there's somewhere between 25 to 35 kids that are serious in that mode. Everybody else is rehabilitative, waiting for some services, and everything that you've heard today put us in a realm to be able to solve that issue and get at the true intent. So in regards to the letter mentioned from the Crime Commission, that letter, I'd have to take, I will gladly take fault for that, because that letter must obviously got displaced, because I do not recall seeing that letter. But to address what's there by this, we will easily be in a situation to be able to meet that call by the Crime Commission and be able to put us in a good stead. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to put that on record.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Borgeson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Kim. I just wanted to point out, actually, the thing that Commissioner Rogers was just talking about is, as we had the total or collective numbers as we started the conversation, if you go back, one of the things we wanted is a breakdown. And so we started to call them the county kids. We say those not on probation, those are actually, the county kids. Those on probation, and then those charged as adults. And we really wanted to start drilling down on what was needed to, one, move them quickly through the system, but then also look at that services need as well. So this actually is much more valuable information to us as we move forward with establishing those programs and services. When you talk about the behavioral initiative that's going on, when they do the screening, I know you and I have had numerous conversations about this topic, and Commissioner Boyle and I had it for adults, and it blended into children as well. But when they do those assessments, is there going to be a way to assess for those brain injuries and dyslexia? And the reason I say that is because we know with both of those diagnoses, they could be treated differently. Because right now they're just thrown into our behavioral health system. And so is there a way to, as we're doing these assessments, to include those two? And I know we have assessment tools for both, and I know you've been involved more with the brain injury one. We have, I guess, another pilot that we're going to try to do with the dyslexia, but I think it needs to be maybe looked at in that behavior, because I wouldn't want to miss children if they're being assessed for those behavioral needs. What is causing that behavioral need? And it could very well be that brain injury or that lack of diagnosis for dyslexia. So I just throw that out there, that during those conversations you are having on that assessment tool, that maybe some way we could fold that into.
And that is the plan, Commissioner. Probably not for the screening tool at booking, because that's a
faster.
Right, and you need to get the youth booked and through processing, and you need to know, is this youth a high suicide risk or not, and what do we need to do to keep the youth safe for 24 hours. But after those youth are detained, in that window I talked about of those 7 to 10 days, to me, that's where we need that behavioral mental health assessment that we're working on, and we're working on a brain injury one and also the dyslexia one, that we would have the opportunity between our educational department to really see if these are the issues, and then also through our expediter. So yes, that is part of the package there,
Okay, that's good. And I wouldn't leave out, even when you're looking at the stability services for our home monitoring program, there could be a potential there for those assessments also on those children, to have the assessments for the brain injury and dyslexia be done on those, and then we would better be able to set them up with the appropriate services that they need.
Well, getting to your point, Commissioner, as we've been working on our community plan, I can tell you we're finding gaps in our services in the community, one of which is our needed tutoring services for our youth, and tutoring services that really match if the youth is dyslexic, if they are academically behind. We need programs that can work with the youth and family on that piece of it. So if anybody, community provider, can provide that service, we do need that service. Other services I can tell you we really need that is a gang intervention, early intervention prevention, and then also a gun and violence prevention, early intervention program. So just wanting to put that out there. Yes, you are right, and yes, we need those type of programs out there.
Well, and I think there you go. And lastly, I just think that the conversation with the Family Resource Center could also be a resource for all of those things.
Yep. Yep.
Well, thank you for a good report, Kim. I have been asked to remind you of what you already know. Any possible proposed legislation that may impact us, we'd sure like to have Marco San Martin and Sean Kelly in the loop on anything
Very much
being considered that may impact our juvenile justice reform.
Right now it's just in the what do you think opinion stage, but as soon as any of those bills filed or potential, I will make sure that everybody has a look at them.
Thank you, Kim. Appreciate the report.
Thanks a lot, yeah.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you. Could you please follow up with me on what response we intend to give to the Crime Commission jail standards people relative to their letter? And if you don't have the letter from 2019 that raises this issue way back then, please let me know and we can share that with you. But this is a real concern because I know there's people that want to expand the scope of the kids' jail downtown, which is a jail, it's a cell block, versus the campus at 42nd Street. That's an ongoing discussion, and we'll have that again in 2021 when we have a new board. But please follow up with me on this. It's a,
Sure.
it's a
And I'll get you the average daily populations and the average length of stay too.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you. I believe this, Luis, the floor is yours.
Luis Jimenez, 3306 Birch Street. I want to respond to the discussion between, at Mr. Kavanaugh. Mr. Rogers pointed out that there is history to consider as it relates to the juvenile justice system here in Douglas County. He mentions that the facility at 42nd and Center was built at a time when there wasn't really much thought about how to better treat the youth. And that this new facility is the new facility that's being built nearby is going to incorporate a new way of thinking, effective programs, a different space for the youth, and that it's going to come together to reduce the numbers. And you know, that's what everybody wants. So that's been kind of like the discussion. But to Mr. Rogers' points about history, it seems to me, Mr. Rogers, you like history when it's convenient for you. But if you look at the statutory changes that Nebraska approved for juvenile justice, that brought down the numbers. Okay? And that was, those juveniles were over on 42nd and Center. Nebraska statutory changes brought down the juvenile detention. Today, we get a report from DCYC data that says 63% of the juveniles are in detention for new charges, and 37% are there for technical violations. Isn't that a success story at the current location? Over at 42nd and Center? The numbers are being brought down qualitatively and quantitatively there. But I'm not going to credit the DCYC. who I'm going to credit is probation, state probation, who you guys, the Board of Commissioners, have every opportunity to communicate and be advocates for the county. That is, for my part, that is one of the things that I have been talking about this whole time, is let's really look at what brings down the numbers. And the more often than not is statutory changes. It's when policymakers and the decision makers come together and say, we're not going to be doing this anymore. You can have programs to improve the experience of the juveniles going through the system. You can have programs to have a better quality of life for not just the juveniles, but for the rest of the community, so they understand that they're being taken care of, that young people, when there's a violation, it's not a dead end. But one thing that is also lacking is in this discussion, as well as with the disproportionate minority contact, is the money situation. When you talk about racial justice, the discussion has to be first, always, and last about money, and the fact that minorities have not been allowed to build wealth, generational wealth in this country. So if you have programs addressing household incomes, that I'll give credit to a program then. If you have programs that help the juveniles have a better understanding about budgeting and economic outlook, I'll consider that a success program. But not everything needs to be about their mental conditions and so on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Luis. Commissioner Rogers.
Chair, I just want to address the comment directly stated that I think it's convenient to use history when it's to my benefit, and well, that I use history at different times for different reasons, basically. And to address that, Louise, I appreciate your interest in the subject, but then your facts are wrong, because I'm gonna take you back to 2004, a year before I got on the board, and the current board that was here at the time started the process for the Juvenile Assessment Center. That was not a state statute. That was the board's effort to put more money into an initiative that reduced the flow of kids going into detention with an alternative program that was diversion. Then I'm gonna take you to 2007, when the board, when the detention center was running at about 220 kids a day, the board took the active effort and had a study done to look at the whole system. And that study was the birthplace for what the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative is in Nebraska. And that started here in a room upstairs in Douglas County. And every year, members of this board, certain members sit down with legislators every year and talk through the legislation. And a lot of that legislation is driven here out of Douglas County. So yes, there is some alternative, there is some things that's geared by statute that makes it statutory, but the effort comes from the will of the board. So I just want to be clear that everything that's going on is not attributed to statute. Statute is driven from the will of this board and the efforts to try to reform that. And also just the fact now that Ms. Havakati brought up about the racial and ethnic disparities piece. The state made a decision a couple of years ago to get out of the business of Title II money. This board decided and took up the cause for racial ethnic disparities and took that money and brought it here to bring that position and try to address that. So I just want to push back on the fact that, yeah, statute has a part to do with it, but it's intentional will of the board to try to change that system. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers.
And if I may comment.
Commissioner Kraft.
Yes, sometimes I don't think Commissioner Kavanaugh and some of the people who watch understand or respect how many hundreds of hours, thousands of hours, Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Borgeson, myself, and others on the county board have spent in seminars, in legislative sessions, in educational sessions, doing research and studying this, including going to other facilities that have had good results. And if Mr. Kavanaugh would work with us instead of trying to be a big rock in the middle of the road, if you would find ways to improve the system instead of just continually, it's like an abusive relationship. Mr. Kavanaugh keeps trying to abuse us. He hasn't studied it. I doubt if at any of the National Association meetings, National Association of Democratic Officials, I doubt if he ever went to any of these seminars and stayed the entire length, just like he doesn't stay for, or hadn't been staying for many of our meetings, and just like he doesn't go to many of the executive sessions. If you don't study it and study it in depth, instead of just trying to look at a way to block it, you can do so much more. And every member of this board has worked hard on this, except for Mr. Kavanaugh, who keeps trying to throw roadblocks out because he thinks, without adequate research, he thinks it's best to keep the youth center that he calls a gulag, because that one is pretty much like it, instead of going to the trauma-informed care. I don't know if he's ever gone out and seen what Boys Town is doing and the success they have, and we can have the same success. But you got to stop throwing roadblocks. You got to work with us. You got to look for ways to improve it. And the history is important, very important. Commissioner Rogers, I commend you for all you've done. And I'm sorry my health wasn't good enough to stay on the board, because there is so much more I'd like to do. But I see in the audience we have Maureen Boyle, who is going to taking my place. And I do know that I'm losing my breath, excuse me. I do know that she's going to be very well informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Crest. I would like to wrap this discussion up as soon as we conveniently can. We do have other items to get to. We do lose the chamber at 1 o'clock. Having said that, the microphone is open for anybody else that would like to address this issue. But I would ask if we could try to keep it brief, please. Do you want the floor, Larry? Otherwise, I'm going to move on.
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I've spent an awful lot of time at this type of thing also. I go back quite a few years to when a judge from Philadelphia came in to tell us about Operation Youth Success. And then various other national organizations started coming to Omaha. And yes, we spent money sending you people to various places around the country for municipal leagues of this and national associations of that. And you came back with their agendas on youth success. But that presentation that we just had, do you not logically look at the figure that says it's still like 78% black population, but not want to ask the question, why? Without listening to the debate of why? It's not my fault. I didn't put them there. If I commit a crime, I'm told that's my fault. If they committed a crime, why are they not told that's their fault? Why do you keep telling us it's systemic racism? We're getting all tired of that. And it is leading to a civil war. Thank you.
Thank you.
I read a lot also.
I will quickly clarify, when Commissioner Morgan and I went up to Minneapolis, St. Paul to visit their youth centers, it was not on the public dime. We paid our own way completely, just to clarify that. Luis, I'm going to ask this to be brief.
Yes.
We're running out of time.
Yes, sir. Thank you. 3306 Birch Street. As it relates to the discussion on history, I was talking about statutory history within the last decade. That was my point.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, I would like to move on.
I'm sorry, just real quick. One of my comments earlier was about the money being spent by this board and the city council, okay? They do spend a lot of money, and they're asking for a lot today to do these things with all these regional and national things. I wasn't just blaming you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'm not speaking.
Good. Not that you're not welcome to, Mr. Clerk. I would like to move on to the next item on the agenda. This is an important one. Kent, if you would come down. This is a request by Waste Management of Nebraska for the extension of a transfer trailer rate for the Pheasant Point landfill. Mr. Holm, what are we looking at here? Oh.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kent Holm, Douglas County Environmental Services Director. Back on October 27th, the board approved the annual CPI amendment resolution adjusting the rates at the Pheasant Point landfill. Those rates went into effect this past on the 1st, December 1st. One of the things that resolution did, it eliminated transfer trailer rates from the published list of rates. Doing that so that Waste Management could better competitively bid those on a per contract basis. One of the other provisions of that resolution was that the county minimum revenue for transfer trailer rates would be $2 per ton. That Waste Management is coming to us today. They would like to have a rate for construction demolition tonnage that would allow for an existing contract that they have with a customer. The revenue as it sits right now would be $1.25 per ton for the tonnage that would be received through next November 30th of 2021. They are also agreeing, though, that there would be an increase to the revenue by 25 cents per ton for each year, effective with that new CPI adjustment date, which would be December 1st of the next couple of years. And so this is what that looks like. So for calendar year 2021, it would be at that $1.25 per ton rate. This is being based on 20,000 tons per year that would generate $25,000 in revenue for the county. The next year, calendar year 2022, that would increase to $1.50, meaning $30,000 for revenue for the county. And then in 2023, it will go to $1.75 per ton and result in $35,000 in estimated revenue. Total to the county over those 3 years would be about $90,000. And then, of course, beyond that point, the 25 cents would get it up to the $2, which is reflected in the board's October 27th resolution. So hopefully that makes sense from a revenue standpoint. At this point, you have a resolution in front of you. Happy to entertain any questions you may have.
This is just for C&D, not for general.
Correct. This is just for one particular waste stream that goes into the landfill on transfer trailers.
All right.
And that Waste Management has an existing contract with a particular customer, And they're simply asking that the board authorize that to continue.
All right. What is the rate at today for C&D? How much the county's rate?
For the transfer trailer, I'm going to let the waste management folks speak to that.
Fine.
So the transfer
If
rate.
you'd identify yourself for the record.
Bryce Thompson with Waste Management.
Thank you.
The current county rate for the, based on the current resolution is $2 a ton on that material. The reason we're asking for this deviation from that is related to the county rate that was previously set in place when we executed this contract with the customer. In that aspect, if we try to do a 75 cent a ton increase on him over in the 1 year, we're likely to lose that volume and lose this revenue for the county. So we've staggered it over a 3-year span.
All right. Commissioner Borgeson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with everything as it is today, what is our total revenue per year for this?
For this specific contract, it's the $25,000 for the county.
That's what we get right now?
Yep.
And that's going to stay the same?
It's not decreasing.
It's not decreasing.
Please speak into the microphone
Sorry.
so the whole everybody hears you.
It's the same as what's listed on there for 2021. It's not decreasing. It's just remaining the same as what was previously negotiated under that last resolution for 2019.
And then the next year it goes up another 25 and then another 25 to get you to the 75 that you want to be at, but not all at once.
Correct. It would continue to have an increase each year until it hit the $2 that's in the current resolution right now to make.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you. If you could just clarify for me, I see what we have in front of us, which is $1.25 in 21, $1.50 in 22, and $1.75 in 23. Is that for this construction waste stream of waste? Is that right?
Yes, it's just for one specific agreement that's already in place because of the previously negotiated county rate for that salvage C&D waste stream that we had.
Gotcha. So where does the $2 per ton for that stream of waste come in? I mean, is that contracted now?
Yes, that's on your current resolution because it comes in across the transfer trailers and the tipper that we're utilizing now.
Okay. So in effect, we would be taking a $2 per ton rate and reducing it to $1.25, $1.50, $1.75, or do I have that right?
Because the contract's already in place, the $1.25 is what you're already receiving from this customer. I'm just asking to stagger the increase over the next 3 years because it would, if we raised it all 75 cents right at one shot,
right,
he has a better, closer option to him that he can go to, and you would lose all of the revenue generated from that customer for the county.
Okay. So under the new contract, we would step up to $2 unless we did this. Is that right?
Correct.
And your vendor that you're talking about would have sticker shock and go elsewhere?
Correct.
Okay. So then at the end of these 3 years, do we then get back to $2 in 2024?
Correct.
Okay. And the 25-cent portion that you were talking about, how does that figure into this? Is it $1.25 plus 25 cents from Waste Management? I thought I heard that there was a 25-cent.
Yeah, the incremental increase each year to the county is 25 cents each year.
I see.
Per ton.
Okay. So in effect, you're asking us to amend our $2 back to this scale.
Just for this one specific agreement that's already in place because it was executed with the $1.25 that was in there on the last resolution.
Okay, executed with whom?
The county board.
When the county board approved the transfer trailer rates a year ago,
yeah,
that particular rate had, there were two different rates. One was for construction demolition debris, the other one's for MSW, municipal solid waste. The rates were a little different. For the MSW one, we get $2 per ton, and the rate at that time for the C&D was $1.25 coming to the county. So when the county board approved the resolution on October 27th, that was effective December 1st, that has just a general statement in there that says the county will receive a minimum $2 per ton for transfer trailer loads. What this is reflecting then is just this one particular contract that Waste Management has with a third party to be able to utilize $1.25 revenue to the county for this year, and then increasing in 25-cent increments for the next 2 years to get them up to the $2. So gives us an opportunity to retain at least that amount of revenue as opposed to losing that customer and having no revenue.
And I presume that you would have recommended this had this been apparent to everybody back then, but you endorse this idea right now.
Yes, I'm comfortable with presenting it as it's written in the resolution for your consideration.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Morgan.
Well, Ken, you know, all of us have a great respect for you and what you do. I mean, you know, you're seeing a 20% increase, you know, in that rate. And in these times, that's a little hard, but you've tried to explain the reasons why. So I plan to probably be supportive of this.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Boyle.
I won't be voting on this because I have a conflict, but I'm sitting here as a taxpayer and I'm very curious. It looks to me like this is not a lot of money involved. I mean, is this, you know, who will make $25,000 a year in 2021? The county will?
The county will. That's the county portion.
Okay, and then the next year it's up to 30.
Correct.
Okay, why are we doing this? Isn't this going to chase the people away? I mean, it's not big money.
It's just one contract.
Huh? That's what I'm asking. Because years ago, I was involved. I was trying to get a demolition site out there, and it was difficult. And but anyway, I'm just as an observer, I'm saying, well, why would we mess with these haulers to get? You know, why would we do this? It's such an insignificant amount of money. Am I goofy on this, or what's going on?
The material that we're getting is already having gone through a salvage and sorting site. So, what was that?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
The material that we're getting has gone through a salvage and sorting site.
Oh, okay.
So that is why in the past we had already looked at this $1.25 for that type of a waste stream before. So I'm just asking that we stagger the 75-cent increase that he's going to see from this so that he continues to use our facility instead of choosing an out-of-state facility that is actually closer to his site.
Okay, well, I guess I'm saying for 25 cents a ton, I don't think it's worth it. I think if you want to keep his business, you have to compete, and I think you ought to keep it low and make the outside guy squirm because you're lower. That's all I'm saying. This is not big bucks. If we're talking several million, it'd be something different. That's my opinion, but that's, you know, what that's worth.
Thank you. Okay, this is all about just one contract, one hauler. This is not the general. This is just
correct.
One single contract we're discussing here. Okay, further questions or comments? Does the board wish to do anything? I will second that. So we have a motion and a second to approve the request by Waste Management of Nebraska for the extension of a transfer trailer rate for the Pheasant Point landfill. Anybody wish to speak to that motion? If not, I would call for the vote, please.
I vote yes.
Motion passes. Commissioner Boyle abstaining. All others voting yes. Commissioner Kraft doing so virtually.
My reason for abstaining, I believe I have to give one, is that I have a client who may benefit from these rate increases.
Yep. Thank you, Commissioner
Thank you,
Boyle.
Commissioners.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Sorry to make you wait half a day for that.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings us next to Human Resources. We have the weekly personnel report. We have legislative issues. Under that, we have consideration of proposed legislation that would allow the Douglas County Board of Health, with the approval of the county board, to issue directed health measures without needing approval of the State Department of Health and Human Services. This coming from Commissioner Boyle.
Yeah, this is the difficulty that, if you want me to speak or no? Oh, I'm sorry, you go right ahead, Chris, you're ahead of that.
We had some conversation about this, if you want to just go ahead and do it, but this exact measure is a part of the legislative request for the Friends of Public Health. So unless you just want to ratify it when the act comes out, it's already in motion of the act.
Okay, well, I'll tell you why it's in there, is that I
Okay.
asked around and nobody knew it was in there.
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure we.
No,
had
I just
that.
found out, we found out Friday.
Okay.
So yeah, they confirmed that they were debating it, but they confirmed
Yeah,
that they're
well,
going to.
I have no I want that to be discussed and voted on, because it's, we're the ones, the biggest county and stuff, and I came down, I was the only public official who testified before the health department, and a lot of folks over here yelling and screaming about.
Mike, could you speak into the microphone so we could all hear you?
I'm really sorry. I'm the one who lectures on that when I commit the sin. Forgive me. What I was saying was that I had testified for this because we're the largest county and we have to go to the Department of Health, which is controlled by the governor, who I believe would void our mask requirement. So I think we ought to have the same status as Lancaster, just for fun.
Amen. Commissioner Borgeson.
Well, I think if it is indeed in the legislation that the health directors are crafting, I think it would still be worth us passing this, saying we want to make sure that this is a part of that legislation, just so we're on the record for that. Because I think this is a good move to make this legislative.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, I agree.
I agree. We actually did pass something about a month ago similar to
Right.
this. I am wholeheartedly for it. I think when we had the situation where our health director, Dr. Adipur, whom everybody loves, as far as I know, gets into a legal confrontation with the Attorney General saying, you stand down or I'm going to stop you in court. That's not her business.
No.
She's in charge of the health department. She's not. And people say, why didn't she fight?
Yeah, I know
No, you don't take on the Attorney General when he says you're legally wrong and I'm going to fight you on it.
Yeah.
You just don't do that.
There were a
This
lot of
legislation,
public frustration over that.
this legislation is important, and I'm glad to see it, an attempt being made to move it forward.
Yeah, Mr. Kavanaugh.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Well, I support a statewide mask mandate, as does every informed person in this community. And I would, of course, support legislation to that effect. The county should go ahead and just impose it. If they want to take us to court, that's fine. The administration in Lincoln's position is akin to that of the mayor in Jaws, who just lets a shark eat people and eat people and eat people because it's good for business. We need a mask mandate today, yesterday, tomorrow, ASAP. If we have to do legislation, that's fine. That's not going to happen for months, and people will get sick and die. We should just do a mask mandate. And I disagree that we shouldn't stand up to the Attorney General and the Governor, because they're wrong on this. We should have a mask mandate. It will help save lives. We should do it right now, but I support this.
Thank you. Further comments?
Luis Jimenez, 3306 Birch Street. I'm sorry, I can't find the proposed legislation on your agenda. I looked at the.
Well, it's item G2A.
Yeah, and
There's no language in there, Luis. It's just a concept.
Oh, it's the concept right now. Okay. Okay, well, not knowing what exactly is being discussed, I agree with the concept. I think that if you're going to have a health department it makes sense that they would give health directives. The county, or the state has, what is it, like 93 counties? Maybe the state should have less counties. And there can be a better consensus on how to run counties. I disagree with you, Mr. Chair, that it's not the health department's director's prerogative or something of interest to sue the governor or the attorney general. It's the health department's like an agency. It's a subordinate, one way or another. So you would expect procedurally that they would have legal representation. The county had funds, does have funds to direct, direct it towards a legal challenge. If the health director did not want to take on that job, the board could have appropriated that effort and sued on the behalf of the public interest or the public health. But it just doesn't make sense that the county health department does not or could not gain or acquire legal representation. You go any other place, and especially if people have money, they have a lawyer. And then as to the mask mandate, that is something that is used to respond to a respiratorily transmitted disease. It's used to reduce the spread of the virus. And so whether people don't like the mandate or not, it doesn't preclude them from wearing a mask mandate, whether there's a directive or not. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Luis. Larry, if you, he's.
I'm just going to say something, Dan.
Larry Storer, 5015 Lafayette Avenue. I'm against this. Some of my earlier remarks were kind of relating to it. But here once again, republics and democracies have failed because of the emergencies of the ruling bodies, whether they be a monarchy or a representative government. Because once they declare those emergencies at the last minute without public knowledge or input, you have in fact had a revolution. Our form is unique because we're from the bottom up rather than all the others that were top down. But there have been no democracies that have really ever survived without a revolution. And then that public hero that wants to save everybody with the Douglas County Board of Health, et cetera, comes in and tells us this and tells us that. And we're a criminal if we don't follow it. Let's walk carefully. Let's find out just exactly how real this crisis is before we pass draconian laws.
Thank you. Commissioner Borgeson?
What? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I think that this is a good step forward in a process that, again, has been a constant moving target for all of us. And of course, I'm going to take credit for the resolution that we brought last week and passed that we got Zoom meetings back on the
That's great.
table.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
we're going to also continue to work as we should with those who can make the decisions right now. But filing suit isn't always the best response nor the best process or path to take. And so I think that with the legislation and working with the Board of Health directors across the state, we'll be able to craft some legislation that's good legislation for us as we move forward.
Thank you. Dr. Porter, seeing you on TV, do you wish to add anything to this discussion at this point?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, I'm doing multitasking, and I just came in late a little bit when you started to talk about this item. So I don't know what you talked about in the beginning, but I just want to give you an update. I mean, all the health directors, there are 19 of us across the state of Nebraska. We have decided that it was necessary to have some legislation, not only about the direct health measures, but there are some other things in statute that potentially need to be cleaned up. And, we all are talking about mask mandate now because that is on front of our mind. But directive health measures can be for lots of other things, and they can be actually regional or county only. So I want to take a step back from this. And what all the directors have decided, and the local health directors have a lobbyist, Eric Gerard, and he works with Sean Kelly also. And both of those have talked to each other yesterday, I think. We have Senator Vargas, but also Senator Kavanaugh, who is really interested in potentially introducing some legislation for us. So we are planning to move ahead in January with potentially introducing legislation for this. So I just wanted to make you all aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Porter.
Could I say just a thing?
Sure, I will second Commissioner Borgeson's motion for approval, and then Commissioner Boyle.
Thanks. What I want to say is that Dr. Poor really covered it, was that I think we ought to make this broader. So that's really, I'm glad to hear that, because there are other things out there, little landmines that she needs power over. She really does. And so I think I did want to tell Larry, though, that this is a monarchy. I'm King Michael I. And so you no longer get to speak. No, I'm just kidding. I'll let you speak whenever. Please know I'm joking. But anyway, I think that, we need this, is all I can really say. It's really important, and I understand the objections and things, but we really need to have that kind of authority. It just, that's the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless there's further comments, I am going to call for the vote on that motion.
I vote yes.
By the way, Mary Ann, I take credit for asking you to contact the governor. Yeah.
Motion passes 7-0. Commissioner Kraft voting virtually, all others in person.
Thank you. Other legislation. Is there any other legislation for our consideration this morning? If not, I will move down to the last action item on the agenda, a resolution setting calendar year 2021 wage increases for various non-union county employees. Coming from Patrick.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Borgeson, second by Commissioner Boyle. Anybody wish to address what's in here? Patrick, tell the world briefly, what are we doing here, if you would? I mean, all this is a resolution setting calendar year wage increases.
Right, so calendar year wage increases for the non-union step and range pay plan employees were set in 2018 for a 3-year period, so that's taken care of. So what we're talking about today is all the other positions that were required to set, whether it be sheriff's captains, bailiffs from the district court, juvenile court employees. Then you show psychiatrists and others, as you can see at the resolution, physicians at the health center. And then, of course, at the bottom, you see the chief deputies. And we set it at proposing 3%. There was a few elected officials who have asked for 4%. And if there's any questions about that, I can get into the whys and wherefores.
For their chief deputies. Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second before us. Questions or comments? Then could we please vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question about salaries.
Okay. Now that we voted?
Well, yeah, but it's not in here. Okay. I wonder whether, it seems to me that the law requires Douglas County and other county people, to pay the public defender on the same level as the county attorney. And the difficulty with that is that their terms are staggered. So I don't know whether, I think Mr. Riley is coming up. Have we considered an increase for him? If we haven't, we ought to be, we're supposed to be, I think by law, paying them pretty close to what they were.
He doesn't have a chief deputy.
What's that? Oh, I know he doesn't have a chief deputy, but his salary himself.
Oh.
Mr. Esch, did you?
Yeah, just last year, so 2019, December 2019, you guys set the 2021 through 2024 salaries of the clerk's position
Yeah.
and public defender. And 2019 and 2020, you are correct. The county attorney was making a higher salary, but you guys set it to where public defender is making the same as the county attorney.
Okay, good.
2021, 2022. And then obviously, the county attorneys hasn't been set yet for 2023, 2024.
Good deal.
But anyway.
Boy, thanks a lot for pulling that out of your memory. And one little comment, you are one hell of a clerk, I'll tell you what. You got it all. You got it all. Thank you.
Thank you, King, Your
Thanks.
Highness. And the motion passed 7-0. Commissioner Kraft voting virtually.
Your Highness, I like it.
Hell of a clerk.
Okay, there is no other public business to conduct this morning. We do have an executive session that will include litigation, negotiations, and personnel. And we will be going up to 9:03 for that. We were going to take a 10-minute break between and ending here. That's fine. 12:30, we will have our executive session up in 9:03 for personnel, litigation, and negotiations.
Mr. Chair, before you do this, can I have a personal privilege?
Uh,
Very quickly. I do want to ask us to take note of the 79th year anniversary of Pearl Harbor, and to also take a few minutes to not only to recognize our men and women who are serving us in this country and in other parts of the world, that they stay safe and that we are thinking of them. And also, I really want to bring up those who have died from the virus and their families. I don't think we've done that officially, but I really think we need to express the thought that we're thinking of them and we support particularly our nurses. I have several friends who are working in that unit, and it is really, it's just hell on wheels. So I wanted to bring that up because I think we should remember some of these people who have allowed us to do what we do today and to talk to Larry the way I do.
I agree. Very good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So move.
Motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Rogers for negotiations, litigation, and personnel up in 9:03 at 12:30. There will be no more public action taking place other than adjournment when we come out of executive session. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the vote?
You said 12:30?
Yeah. 12:30 and 9:03.
Commissioner, looks like Commissioner Kraft has left us, so the motion passes 6-0.
Very good.
President voting yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.